The train whistle cut through the Wyoming morning like a blade through silk.
I'll
June
take you home if you'll let me.
1887. Laramie Station stood weathered and worn against the endless sky, its wooden planks bearing witness to 1,000 arrivals and departures. But this morning would carve itself into memory with particular cruelty. Clara Mitchell stood on that platform, her Boston-bred posture refusing to bend, even as her world collapsed around her. 28 years old, dressed in navy wool that had cost her 3 months of seamstress wages back east. She held a torn train ticket in one trembling hand and a hastily scrawled letter in the other. The words swam before her eyes, but she'd already memorized their poison. "Clara, I cannot do this. Find your own way." Marcus, the man who'd written her 37 letters over 14 months. The man who'd promised her a new life, a fresh start, children who'd run free under western skies. The man who'd taken her money for his supposed business venture and disappeared into the morning mist while she slept in the train car, exhausted from 3 days of travel. She didn't cry. That would come later, maybe in some private moment when the world wasn't watching. Instead, she stood straighter, her chin lifted in that particular way her mother had taught her. Never let them see you break, Clara. The world feeds on broken women. The platform began to empty. Families reunited, businessmen hurried toward town, and still Clara stood there, a statue of dignified devastation. Her luggage, 2 cases that held everything she owned, sat beside her like faithful dogs. Inside them were her mother's medical books, the ones she'd studied by candlelight after working 14-hour days at the textile mill. Her needle and thread, the fine ones she'd saved for. A photograph of her parents, both dead, now from the consumption that had swept through Boston's tenements like wildfire through dry grass. The station master, a grizzled man with kind eyes beneath bushy brows, approached her slowly. "Miss Train's gone now. You waiting for someone?" Clara's voice came out steady, surprising even herself. "No, sir. I find myself in need of accommodations. Might you direct me to a respectable establishment?" He scratched his beard, eyeing her fine clothes, her pale skin that marked her as Eastern bred, unsuited for this harsh land. "The Frontier House is 2 blocks down. Mrs. Henderson runs a clean place." He paused, then added more gently, "Though it ain't cheap, miss." "Thank you." Clara picked up her cases, the weight of them pulling at her shoulders. She had exactly $12 to her name. Marcus had been very thorough in his deception, convincing her to pool their resources for their new life. She'd been a fool, but she'd be damned if she'd be a public one. The walk to the Frontier House felt like miles. The Wyoming sun, even in early morning, had a quality different from Boston's filtered light. It was honest sun, harsh and clean, exposing everything it touched. Clara's boots, polished to a shine just yesterday, clicked against the wooden sidewalks. Men tipped their hats. Women assessed her with sharp eyes. She was clearly a story walking through their town, and everyone wanted to know how it would end. Mrs. Henderson proved to be a narrow woman with a narrow mind and narrow sympathies. She looked Clara up and down like she was calculating the exact degree of her desperation. $3 a night paid in advance. No visitors after 9. No liquor in the rooms. No gentlemen callers ever. $3. Clara couldn't help the shock in her voice. That was highway robbery even for a frontier town. "That's the price. Take it or leave it." Clara's pride wrestled with her practicality. At $3 a night, she had 4 nights of shelter, maybe 5, if she didn't eat. After that, the street, she supposed. Or worse, the kind of establishment where women without options ended up. She'd seen enough of those in Boston's darker corners. "I'll need to consider," Clara said with as much dignity as she could muster. "Might I leave my luggage while I explore my options?" Mrs. Henderson's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "This ain't a storage facility, miss. You pay or you go." Clara lifted her cases again, her arms already aching. "Then I'll go." Back on the street, the sun had climbed higher, and with it, the temperature. Sweat gathered beneath her corset that torturous garment of Eastern propriety that had no place in this raw land. She found a bench outside the general store and sat her cases beside her, trying to think. She could sell something. Her mother's books might fetch a price, though the thought of parting with them cut deep. Her good dress, perhaps. Or she could look for work immediately, though who would hire a woman fresh off the train with soft hands and no references? You look like you're carrying the world in those cases. The voice was deep weathered, like leather, left in the sun. Clara looked up to find a man standing near, not too close to be improper, but close enough that she could see the kindness in his weathered face. He was tall, lean in that way of men who worked with their hands and backs, dressed in worn but clean clothes. A cowboy by the look of him, with a gun belt that sat natural on his hips and boots that had walked many miles. "Just my world, sir," Clara replied, too tired for pretense, "which has recently become much smaller." He studied her for a moment, and she could see him taking in the details. Her fine clothes, her exhausted posture, the way she held those cases like they were all that kept her tethered to earth. "Sam Hayes," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "And you're fresh off the morning train from back east." It wasn't a question. Clara supposed her story was written all over her. "Clara Mitchell, from Boston, though I suppose that hardly matters now." "Everything matters, Miss Mitchell. Just some things matter more than others." Sam looked toward the frontier house. "Mrs. Henderson turned you away." "Her prices did. She's got a nose for desperation, charges accordingly." He shifted his weight, seeming to consider something. "You got plans." Clara laughed, a sound bitter as alkali water. "I had plans. They involved a man who's currently somewhere between here and California with my life savings." Sam nodded slowly, like this was a story he'd heard before. Maybe he had. The West was full of abandoned women, broken promises, and fresh starts that turned into dead ends. "Well, Miss Mitchell, seems to me you got two choices. You can sit on this bench feeling sorry for yourself, or you can figure out what comes next." The words should have stung, but somehow they didn't. There was no judgment in them, just plain truth served straight. Clara appreciated that after months of Marcus's honeyed lies. "And what would you suggest comes next, Mr. Hayes?" Before he could answer, a commotion erupted from the saloon across the street. Two men burst through the doors, fists flying, cursing loud enough to make proper ladies cover their ears. Clara didn't cover hers. She'd heard worse in the mills. But then, one man pulled a knife, the blade catching the sunlight, like a promise of violence. The crowd scattered, and in the chaos, a young boy, maybe 6 years old, stood frozen in the street, directly in the path of the fighting men. Clara moved without thinking. She dropped her cases, picked up her skirts, and ran. Her mother had always said she had more courage than sense, and here was the proof. She grabbed the boy, pulling him against her, just as the men crashed past the knife, missing them by inches. The boy's mother appeared crying and reaching for her child. Clara handed him over, her heart still racing. When she turned back, Sam Hayes was holding her cases, a curious expression on his face. "That was either very brave or very foolish," he said. "My mother always said there wasn't much difference between the two." Sam smiled, then the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, showing the man he might have been before, whatever had carved those lines around his eyes. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." She was. They stood there for a moment, the chaos of the fight settling around them like dust after a storm. The man with the knife was being hauled off by the sheriff, the other nursing a bloody nose and a bruised ego. Normal life in Laramie resumed its rhythm. Sam Hayes had not intended to involve himself in anyone's troubles that morning. He'd ridden into Laramie with a simple purpose: sell the extra supplies from his ranch, buy what he needed for the coming season, and get back to his solitary existence before the afternoon heat made the ride unbearable. But watching Clara Mitchell stand on that platform, abandoned but unbroken, had stirred something in him he'd thought dead. These 3 years passed. Now, as he helped her gather her composure after the street altercation, he found himself studying her more closely. She had the kind of face that told stories, not beautiful in the conventional sense, but striking in its intelligence and determination. Her hands, though soft from Eastern living, moved with the precise efficiency of someone who'd worked hard in different ways. There was steel beneath that proper exterior, the kind that didn't break under pressure, but got stronger. "Miss Mitchell," he said, setting her cases down beside her. "I run a ranch about 15 miles northwest of here. Nothing fancy, but it's honest work. I could use help with the books and correspondence. My writing's rough, and numbers give me headaches. If you're looking for employment, I'd pay fair wages plus room and board." Clara's eyes narrowed slightly, the look of a woman who'd learned to question every offer, especially from men. "That's a generous proposal, Mr. Hayes, but you know nothing about my qualifications. I know you can read and write better than most folks out here. I know you've got courage enough to throw yourself between a child and danger. And I know you're in a tight spot, but too proud to beg." He paused, then added, "That's qualification enough for me." She was quiet for a long moment, weighing options that weren't really options at all. The sun climbed higher, and the street filled with the business of the day. Wagons rolled past, kicking up dust that settled on everything like a fine shroud. Finally, she spoke. "I'll need certain assurances, Mr. Hayes. Separate quarters, clear understanding of duties, and the freedom to leave whenever I choose." "Agreed on all counts. I've got a small cabin separate from the main house. Used to be for the foreman back when I could afford one. It's clean private, got its own stove and pump. As for leaving Miss Mitchell, the only chains on my ranch are the ones we use for pulling stumps." Despite everything, Clara almost smiled at that. "And your wife will she be comfortable with this arrangement?" The question hit Sam like a physical blow, though he kept his face steady. "No wife. Not anymore." There was a weight to those 3 words that Clara recognized. She'd heard that same tone in her own voice when people asked about her parents. Loss had its own language spoken in the spaces between words. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said simply. 3 years past now. Her and our boy both. Fever took them while I was away on a cattle drive. The words came out flat practiced, like he'd said them so many times they'd lost their sharp edges. "Just me and my sister Rose now, though she lives in town. She's a nurse, helps out when she can." Clara absorbed this information, understanding now the kindness in his offer. He was a man who knew what it was like to lose everything. Maybe that's why he'd stop to help a stranger doing the same. "When would you need me to start?" "Soon as you're ready. I've got supplies to load, then we can head out. Unless you need time to." He gestured vaguely toward the town, "settle affairs." Clara laughed bitter and short. "My affairs, Mr. Hayes, are thoroughly unsettled and likely to remain so. I can leave immediately." Sam studied her for another moment, then nodded. "Wait here. I'll bring the wagon around." As he walked away, Clara sat back on the bench, her mind spinning. She was about to leave town with a complete stranger, heading to an isolated ranch where anything could happen. Her mother would have been horrified, but then, her mother had never been abandoned at a train station with $12 to her name. The wagon Sam brought around was sturdy but worn like everything else about him. The horses were well fed and calm, their coats brushed to a shine that spoke of a man who took care of what was his. He loaded her cases carefully, then offered his hand to help her up. His palm was calloused and warm, the grip firm but gentle. "It's a fair ride," he warned. "Road gets rough after the first 5 miles. Mr. Hayes, I just spent 3 days on a train with a man who turned out to be a fiction. I believe I can handle a rough road." As they drove out of Laramie, Clara got her first real look at the Wyoming territory. It was nothing like Boston, nothing like anywhere she'd been. The land stretched out endless and unforgiving, painted in shades of brown and gold and sage green. Mountains rose in the distance like the earth's own ambition, reaching toward a sky so blue it hurt to look at directly. Sam drove in comfortable silence for the first hour, letting her absorb the enormity of where she was, what she'd done. Finally, he spoke. "That man who left you, he have a name. Marcus Thornton, though I'm beginning to suspect that was as false as everything else about him. Con men blow through here regular as tumbleweeds, promise folks all kinds of things, gold mines, business partnerships, marriage, take what they can get, and disappear into the territory. And the law." Sam shrugged. "The law's got bigger problems than broken hearts and empty pockets. Indians, cattle rustlers, claim jumpers. Unless he killed someone or stole a horse, Marcus Thornton's probably free and clear." Clara felt the last of her hope die quietly. She'd entertained fantasies of justice of Marcus being caught and forced to return what he'd taken. But this was the West. Justice was what you made for yourself. "Tell me about your ranch," she said, changing the subject. "Nothing special, 160 acres, about 50 head of cattle, some horses. I run it mostly alone, hire hands, during branding and drives. House is solid, built it myself 6 years ago when Mary and I first married." He paused, that careful pause of someone navigating around painful memory. "It's quiet, maybe too quiet sometimes. And what exactly would my duties be? Keeping the books mostly, writing letters to buyers, suppliers, maybe help with cooking when Rose isn't around. She tries to come out weekly, make sure I'm not living on beans and coffee, but she's got her own life in town, her own troubles." "Troubles?" Sam's jaw tightened slightly. "She's sweet on someone the town doesn't approve of. Thomas Crow Feather. He's Arapaho, works as a translator for the army. Good man, educated back east, but that doesn't matter to folks who only see the color of his skin." Clara nodded slowly. She'd seen plenty of that kind of prejudice in Boston, though directed at Irish and Italians rather than Indians. Hate, she'd learned, was remarkably adaptable. They stopped at a creek to water the horses. Sam helped her down, and she walked a bit, stretching legs, cramped from sitting. The water ran clear and cold, and she knelt beside it, cupping some in her hands to drink. "It's sweet," she said, surprised. "Snowmelt from the mountains. This creek runs through my property. Never runs dry, even in the worst drought." He paused, then added, "Mary loved this spot. Used to bring Jamie here to catch tadpoles." Clara heard the past tense heavy in his voice. Mary, Jamie, the family he'd lost. She wanted to say something comforting, but what comfort could she offer? She knew how hollow words were in the face of that kind of loss. "How old was your boy?" 4. Would be 7 now, if. Sam trailed off, looking toward the mountains. "He had Mary's eyes and my stubbornness. Smart as a whip, that boy. Already knew his letters could count to 50. They stood in silence for a moment, the creek babbling between them. Then Sam seemed to shake himself like a dog shaking off water. "We should move on. Want to be home before dark." As they continued the journey, the road did indeed get rougher. Clara gripped the wagon seat as they bounced over ruts and rocks. But she didn't complain. This was her choice, her chance. Whatever came next, it had to be better than what she'd left behind. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they crested a hill. "Ask. Why did you really offer me this job, and don't say it's about bookkeeping? You've managed 3 years without help." Sam was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Maybe because I remember what it's like to have your world end at a train station. Mary and Jamie were supposed to come back from visiting her sister in Cheyenne. I was there waiting when the telegram came instead. Fever had taken them both on the journey." He looked at her sideways. "Or maybe because you reminded me that there are still people who run toward trouble to help strangers. Been a while since I've seen that kind of courage." Clara felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight grip she'd kept on her emotions all day. Mr. Hayes. Sam. If we're going to be working together, might as well be Sam and Clara. Sam, she corrected. I should tell you, I have medical training. Informal, but substantial. My mother was a nurse in the war, taught me everything she knew. If that's useful. Useful? Sam actually laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Clara, the nearest doctor is 30 miles away and drunk half the time. Medical knowledge is worth its weight in gold out here. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sam pointed ahead. There, that's home. Clara looked and saw a collection of buildings nestled in a valley. A main house, a barn, the promised cabin, and various outbuildings. Smoke rose from the main house chimney, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance. It wasn't grand, but it was solid, real carved out of this unforgiving land by determination and hard work. It's perfect, she said, surprising herself by meaning it. Sam glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. It's a hard life out here, Clara. Want you to know that going in. Winter's brutal, summer's worse. The work never stops, and the land doesn't forgive mistakes. Neither does Boston, Clara replied. At least here, the challenges are honest ones. As they rolled down toward the ranch, Clara felt something she hadn't expected. Not hope exactly, but the possibility of it. She'd lost everything, but maybe in this vast and terrible landscape she could build something new, something true, something hers. That first night in the cabin, Clara didn't sleep. She lay on the narrow bed, fully dressed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Wyoming night. Wind through the pines, cattle lowing in the distance, something scratching on the roof that Sam had assured her was just a raccoon. The cabin was clean, as promised, sparse but functional. A single room with a bed, a small table, 2 chairs, and a stove. A shelf held a few books, their spines worn from reading. She'd looked at them earlier. Shakespeare, a Bible, a medical journal dated 1882, and, surprisingly, Jane Eyre. By lamplight, she finally opened the letter Marcus had left her, the one she'd stuffed in her pocket at the station. She'd read it once in shock, but now she read it again, looking for clues she'd missed. Clara, I cannot do this. The burden of your expectations, your desperate need for a new life. It's too much. Find your own way. You're stronger than you know. M. Stronger than you know. The condescension of it made her burn with fresh anger, as if abandoning her was somehow a favor, a lesson in self-reliance. She crumpled the letter and threw it in the stove, watching it burn to ash. Good riddance to bad rubbish, as her mother would have said. Her mother. Clara pulled out the photograph she'd kept in her travel bag, holding it near the lamp. Margaret Mitchell had been a formidable woman, tall, sharp-eyed, with hands that could deliver a baby or set a broken bone with equal skill. She'd served as a nurse in the war between the states, seeing things that would have broken lesser people. Instead, it had made her harder, like a blade tempered in fire. Never depend on a man for your happiness, Clara, she'd said on her deathbed, her voice barely a whisper, but still commanding. They'll fail you not from malice, but from being human. Depend on yourself, your skills, your courage. Those won't abandon you at a train station. Had her mother known? Had she somehow sensed that her daughter would one day face exactly that Clara traced the familiar features in the photograph? The strong jaw she'd inherited, the determined set of the mouth. Her mother had been right about so many things. Why hadn't she listened? A soft knock at the door made her jump. Clara, it's Sam. Brought you some supper. She opened the door to find him holding a plate covered with a cloth and a steaming mug. Figured you might be hungry. It's nothing fancy. Beef stew and cornbread. Coffee's probably too strong, but it's hot. Thank you. She took the offerings, struck by the simple kindness of the gesture. Would you like to come in just for a moment? He hesitated, clearly mindful of propriety, then stepped just inside the door, leaving it open behind him. Settling in all right. Yes, it's perfectly comfortable. She set the food on the table, then turned to face him. Sam, I need to ask you something. Why do you really trust me? You don't know me. I could be a thief, a murderer, anyone. Sam leaned against the doorframe, considering. My Mary used to say, I could read people like I read horses, see the truth of them beneath what they show the world. He paused, his eyes distant. I've made my mistakes, trusted the wrong folks a time or two. But you're running from something, not toward it. There's a difference. What if what I'm running from catches up? Then we'll deal with it. But Clara, everyone out here is running from something. The West is built on second chances and buried pasts. After he left, Clara ate the stew. Simple but good-flavored with herbs she didn't recognize. The coffee was indeed too strong, but she drank it anyway, needing the warmth. As she ate, she thought about Sam's words, running from not toward. He was right, of course. She'd been running from Boston long before she'd met Marcus. The memories came flooding back, unwanted but insistent. The textile mill where she'd worked after her father died, leaving her and her mother with nothing but debts. 14-hour days in air thick with cotton dust, the constant clatter of machinery girls fainting from exhaustion and poor air. Her fingers had bled those first weeks from the rough thread, but she'd wrapped them and kept working. No choice. Never any choice. Then there was James. She'd thought he was different from the other foremen, kinder, more interested in her mind than her body. He'd lent her books, discussed poetry during the brief lunch breaks. When he'd proposed, she'd seen it as salvation, a way out of the mills, a decent life. But 3 days before the wedding, she'd found him with Annie Sullivan in the supply closet, his hands where they shouldn't be, his promises as empty as Marcus's would later prove to be. That betrayal had broken something in her, not her spirit. That was too strong, inherited from her mother's steel spine. But her ability to trust, to believe in the goodness of people's words. She'd thrown herself into learning her mother's medical skills, thinking knowledge would be her salvation. Then her mother had died, coughing blood into handkerchiefs they tried to keep hidden from each other. Alone, desperate when Marcus's advertisement for a mail-order bride had seemed like divine providence. A successful businessman in Wyoming, seeking an educated woman for marriage and partnership. His letters had been everything James's promises weren't. Detailed, thoughtful painting, pictures of a life where she'd be valued for her intelligence, her medical knowledge, her strength. Fool, fool, fool. Clara stood abruptly, needing to move. She stepped outside into the cool night air. The sky was impossibly vast, stars scattered like spilled salt across black velvet. No gaslight here to dim their glory, no smoke from factories to blur their edges. The Milky Way stretched overhead like a river of light. Can't sleep. She turned to find Sam sitting on his porch, barely visible in the darkness. Too many ghosts, she admitted. They follow you out here, but the space is bigger, dilutes them some. He paused. Want to talk about it? Clara found herself walking toward him, drawn by the steadiness of his voice. She sat on the porch step, maintaining proper distance, but close enough to feel less alone. My mother died 6 months ago. Consumption. She spent her last years teaching me everything she knew about medicine, as if she knew I'd need it. Clara pulled her shawl tighter. She was right. That knowledge is all I have left of value. Knowledge and courage, Sam corrected. Saw both today. Courage. Clara laughed bitterly. Is it courage when you have no choice? When moving forward is the only direction left? That's the only kind of courage that matters. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Sam spoke again, his voice low and heavy with memory. Mary and I met at a church social in Cheyenne. She was visiting her sister wearing this yellow dress that made her look like sunshine. Couldn't dance worth a damn, but she laughed when she stepped on my feet, and that was it for me. His voice caught slightly. We married 3 months later. Her father said I was too wild, too rough for his daughter. Maybe he was right. You blame yourself. It wasn't a question. I was supposed to go with them to Cheyenne, but there was a problem with the cattle rustlers taking calves. I stayed to handle it. If I'd been there, maybe I could have gotten them to a doctor sooner. Maybe." He trailed off. Rose says the fever was too strong, nothing would have helped, but knowing and believing are different things. Claire understood that too well. "My mother made me promise not to blame myself for her death. Said the consumption was in her lungs long before I could have done anything, but I still wonder if I'd noticed sooner, acted faster." "We carry our dead with us," Sam said quietly. "Question is whether we let them drag us down or push us forward. Which do yours do? Depends on the day. Today, meeting you, remembering there are still good people worth helping. Today, they pushed me forward." Something passed between them in the darkness, an understanding that needed no words. They were both broken people carrying ghosts and guilt in equal measure. But broken didn't mean worthless. Sometimes the cracks were where the light got in. "Tell me about Rose," Clara said, changing the subject to something less heavy. Sam's voice warmed noticeably. "She's 10 years younger than me, stubborn as a mule, and twice as smart. Learned nursing from an old woman who'd patched up soldiers in the Mexican War. When Doc Harrison's drunk, which is often folks call for Rose instead." He paused. "The thing with Thomas Crow Feather, it's killing her. She loves him, he loves her, but the town won't accept it. Sheriffs made threats. Good Christian folks talking about tar and feathers. What do you think about it?" "I think love's rare enough in this world without folks trying to stamp it out. Thomas is a good man, educated kind, treats Rose like she hung the moon. His skin color doesn't change that." Clara thought about the Irish boys in Boston, how they couldn't court proper American girls without causing scandal, how her own mother had been shunned for marrying Clara's father, a Scottish immigrant with more education than money. Prejudice wore different faces, but its heart was always the same. Small people trying to make themselves bigger by making others smaller. "I'd like to meet her," Clara said. "She'll be by day after tomorrow. Always comes Wednesday to check on me, make sure I'm eating more than jerky and coffee." He stood, joints creaking slightly. "You should try to sleep. Tomorrow I'll show you the books, introduce you to the horses. They're the real judges of character around here." Clara stood as well aware suddenly of how tired she was. The weight of the day, the journey, the complete upheaval of her life. It all pressed down on her like a physical thing. "Sam," she called as he headed toward his door. "Thank you for taking a chance on me." He paused, silhouetted against the stars. "We're taking a chance on each other, Clara. That's how it works out here. We succeed together or fail together. No middle ground." Back in her cabin, Clara finally undressed, putting on her nightgown for the first time since leaving Boston. She unpacked her mother's medical books, setting them carefully on the shelf next to the Shakespeare. Tomorrow, she'd start her new life properly. Tonight, she'd allow herself to grieve the old one. As she lay down, she heard a sound that made her freeze. Howling, long and mournful, answered by another, then another. Wolves. Sam had mentioned them, said they rarely came close to the ranch, but their presence was a reminder of where she was. This wasn't Boston with its ordered streets and predictable dangers. This was the frontier where nature still had teeth. But as she pulled the blanket up to her chin, Clara felt something she hadn't expected. Not fear, but a strange kind of peace. Here the dangers were honest. Wolves howled because they were wolves. Winter killed because it was cold. The land didn't lie. You didn't promise what it couldn't deliver. After Marcus, after James, after all the civilized betrayals, there was something almost comforting in that raw honesty. She thought about Sam's words, broken people taking chances on each other. Maybe that's all any of them could do out here, build something from the pieces left after life had done its worst. It wasn't the future she'd planned, but plans she'd learned were just stories we told ourselves. Reality was messier, harder, but maybe, just maybe, more true. The morning came with violence. Clara woke to the sound of Sam's voice, urgent and sharp, cutting through the thin walls of her cabin. Clara need you now." She threw on her dress, not bothering with all the buttons, grabbed her mother's medical bag from beside the bed, and ran barefoot across the frost-covered ground. The sun was barely up the sky, that pale gray that comes before true dawn. She found Sam in the barn, kneeling beside his horse, a beautiful bay mare named Duchess. The horse was down her sides, heaving foam at her mouth. But it wasn't the horse that made Clara's blood run cold. It was the rattlesnake, thick as her wrist, coiled in the corner of the stall, its tail singing that unmistakable warning. "She's been bit," Sam said, his voice tight with control, legs swelling fast. Clara's mind shifted into the clinical space her mother had taught her, where emotion stepped aside and knowledge took over. When, maybe 10 minutes ago, I heard her screaming came running. The snake. Still there, can't get a clear shot without risking Duchess. Clara assessed the situation quickly. The horse was in agony, the bite location visible now. Right foreleg already swollen to twice its normal size. The snake was agitated, trapped, dangerous, and Sam looked like he was about to do something desperate. "Sam, listen to me," Clara said, her voice taking on the authority she'd learned from watching her mother command emergency situations. "I need you to step back. Slowly. Don't turn your back on the snake. I'm not leaving her. You're not. You're giving me room to work. Trust me." Something in her voice must have reached him because he moved back, though every muscle in his body fought against it. Clara opened her medical bag, pulling out a scalpel and a vial of carbolic acid. "What are you doing?" "What my mother did for snake-bit soldiers in Georgia. Move back more." Clara approached Duchess slowly, speaking in low, soothing tones. The horse's eyes rolled white with pain and fear, but Clara kept talking nonsense, really just the sound of her voice creating a bubble of calm in the chaos. She knelt beside the leg, examining the puncture wounds. 2 clear marks already turning purple-black. "This is going to hurt her," she warned Sam. "Can you hold her head?" He moved immediately, cradling Duchess's head in his lap, stroking her neck. The trust between man and horse was evident, even in crisis. Clara made 2 quick incisions at the bite marks, crossing them to form an X. Blood flowed thick and dark. She bent down and did something that made Sam gasp. She put her mouth to the wound and sucked, spitting out blood and venom onto the barn floor. "Clara, no. That's poison. Only if you have cuts in your mouth," she said between spitting. "Which I don't." She repeated the process 3 more times, then poured carbolic acid over the wounds. Duchess screamed the sound horrible in the enclosed space, but Clara didn't flinch. "Now," she said, sitting back on her heels, "we need to deal with that snake." The rattler was still coiled, but Clara could see it was looking for escape. The barn door was open behind them. If it got past them, it could hide anywhere, remain a constant danger. "I need a long stick," Clara said, "and a bucket." "Clara, just trust me." Sam fetched both, though his expression said he thought she'd lost her mind. Clara took the stick, moving with deliberate calm toward the snake. She'd seen her mother do this once with a copperhead that had gotten into their Boston tenement's basement. The key was confidence and steady movement. She used the stick to pin the snake just behind its head, quick and sure. The snake thrashed its body, whipping wildly, but she held firm. With her free hand, she grabbed just behind where the stick held it, gripping tight behind the jaw so it couldn't turn and bite. "Bucket," she said calmly. Sam slid it over, and she deposited the snake inside, slamming the lid on top. The whole thing had taken maybe 30 seconds, but Sam looked at her like she'd just parted the Red Sea. "Where the hell did you learn that Boston tenements have their own dangers?" Clara said, wiping sweat from her forehead with a shaking hand. Now that the immediate danger was past, reaction was setting in. Though the snakes there were usually the 2-legged kind. She turned back to Duchess, checking the wounds again. The swelling had stopped spreading, a good sign. "We need to keep her still. Keep the leg lower than her heart, if possible. Cold compresses on the swelling. And watch for infection." "Will she make it?" Clara met his eyes honestly. "I don't know." The next 24 hours will tell. But she's got a chance. Better than she had 10 minutes ago. Sam looked at her, then really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. You saved her life, maybe saved mine too. I was about to go for that snake with my bare hands. That would have been remarkably stupid, Clara said, then immediately softened her tone. But I understand. She matters to you. Had her 8 years. Broke her myself. She's carried me through storms, rivers saved my life more than once when cattle got ornery. He stroked Duchess's neck. Mary loved her too. Used to sneak her apples, thought I didn't know. They spent the next hour tending to Duchess together, applying cold compresses, cleaning the wounds, making her as comfortable as possible. The snake still in the bucket was dealt with later. Sam took it far from the ranch and released it. Everything's got a right to live, he said. Just not in my barn. By the time the sun was fully up, Duchess was stable, her breathing easier. Clara was exhausted, covered in blood and dirt, but satisfied. She'd proven her worth here, not with books and letters, but with action when it mattered. You need breakfast, Sam said, and probably a bath. I'll heat water. I can manage. Clara. He stopped her with a hand on her arm, gentle but firm. You just saved my horse and probably kept me from getting myself killed. Let me heat some water and make you breakfast. It's the least I can do. She nodded, too tired to argue, while Sam heated water and filled the tin tub he'd set up in a corner of her cabin, behind a screen for privacy. Clara sat on the porch, watching the morning unfold across the valley. The mountains were pink with sunrise, and the air was so clear she could see for miles. Rose arrived while Clara was still bathing her voice, caring from the main house. Sam Hayes. What in God's name happened here? There's blood all over the barn floor, and is that a snakebite kit? Clara dressed quickly, her hair still damp, and emerged to find a woman who could only be Sam's sister. Rose Hayes had the same lean build, the same direct gaze, but where Sam was all hard edges, Rose had a softness about her, a warmth that reminded Clara of her mother. You must be Clara, Rose said, extending her hand without hesitation. Sam sent word yesterday that he'd hired help, though from the look of things you've already earned your keep, and then some. Clara shook her hand, noting the calluses, the short, practical nails, the strength in the grip. These were hands that worked, that healed. Clara Mitchell, your brother's horse was snake-bit this morning. And she treated it, Sam added, coming from the barn. Sucked the venom out, dealt with the snake bare-handed. Rose's eyebrows shot up. Bare-handed, with a stick, Clara clarified. I'm not completely insane. Rose laughed, bright and genuine. Oh, I like you already. Come on, both of you. I brought fresh bread and jam, and I want to hear this whole story. They sat around Sam's kitchen table, and Clara found herself relaxing for the first time since stepping off that train. Rose was easy to talk to her questions, intelligent and interested. She knew medicine too, and they fell into discussing treatments and techniques, while Sam listened occasionally, adding details about Duchess's condition. Your mother taught you well, Rose said after Clara described the venom extraction process. That's battlefield medicine, practical and effective. She learned during the war. Said pretty techniques were for peacetime, but when lives were on the line, you did what worked. Smart woman. I'd have liked to meet her. She'd have liked you too, Clara said, meaning it. She always said the best nurses were the ones who weren't afraid to get their hands dirty. Rose stayed through lunch, and by the time she left, Clara felt like she'd made a friend. But as Rose was mounting her horse to leave, she pulled Clara aside. I need to warn you about something, Rose said quietly. Sam didn't mention it because he probably doesn't think it matters, but Marcus Thornton was through here 2 weeks ago. Clara's blood went cold. What? He was asking around town about land deals, trying to charm Widow Henderson into investing in some scheme. She ran him off. But Clara... Rose's expression was serious. He mentioned he was expecting his fiancée to join him soon, a woman from Boston with medical training. The world tilted slightly. Clara gripped the fence post to steady herself. He talked about me. Not by name, but it had to be you. Clara, I think he might come back. Men like that, they don't like loose ends. And a woman who might talk about how he swindled her. That's a loose end. I won't run, Clara said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. I'm done running. Rose studied her for a moment, then nodded. Good, because my brother needs someone like you around. He's been a ghost these 3 years. Today's the most alive I've seen him since Mary died. She mounted her horse with practiced ease. I'll keep my ears open in town. If Thornton shows his face again, you'll know. After Rose left, Clara found Sam in the barn with Duchess. The mare was standing now, weight off her injured leg, but alert, eating hay from his hand. She's going to make it, he said as Clara approached. Looks like it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sam spoke. Rose told you about Thornton. It wasn't a question. Clara nodded. She thought I should know. What do you want to do about it? Clara considered the question. What did she want? This morning she'd wanted simply to survive, to find a place to rest and regroup. But now, after the crisis with Duchess, after meeting Rose, after proving she belonged here, something had shifted. I want to learn to shoot, she said. Sam looked at her surprised. Shoot? You said it yourself. The law won't help. And if Marcus comes back, I want to be ready. I'm done being a victim, Sam. Done being the woman things happen to. I want to be the woman who happens to things. A slow smile spread across Sam's face, the kind that transformed his usually serious expression. Well then, Clara Mitchell, let's teach you to shoot. They started that afternoon with an old Colt .45 heavy in Clara's hands but balanced solid. Sam set up targets, cans on fence posts, and showed her how to stand, how to sight, how to squeeze the trigger instead of pulling it. Her first shot went wide, the recoil surprising her. The second was closer. By the 10th, she hit the can, sending it spinning off the post. Natural talent, Sam said, but Clara could tell he was pleased. Same steady hands that handled that snake. Different kind of venom, Clara said, reloading the way he'd shown her. They practiced until the sun was low, until Clara's arm ached and her ears rang, despite the cotton Sam had given her to stuff in them. But she could hit more often than not now, and there was something deeply satisfying about that. As they walked back toward the house, Sam carrying the guns, Clara carrying the damaged cans, he said, You know what you did this morning with Duchess. Most people would have frozen, even people who've been out here for years. I don't freeze, Clara said simply. My mother used to say I went the opposite direction, rushed toward trouble instead of away from it. Said it would either make me a great nurse or get me killed. Maybe both, Sam said, but he was smiling. Clara, I need to say something. This morning when you took charge, when you saved Duchess, I saw something I haven't seen in a long time. Hope maybe. Or just the possibility that life might surprise me again in a good way. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. Sam. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. Just wanted you to know that having you here, it matters. More than just the help with the books. They'd reached her cabin. Clara turned to face him, the setting sun painting everything gold. It matters to me too. Being here, being useful, being... She searched for the word, being seen, not as someone to rescue or pity, but as someone capable. You're more than capable, Sam said softly. You're remarkable. Something passed between them, then electric and undeniable, but neither moved toward it. Too soon. Too much history, too many ghosts still walking around in broad daylight. Instead, Clara said, Same time tomorrow for shooting practice. Wouldn't miss it. That night, Clara wrote in her journal for the first time since leaving Boston. Today, I sucked venom from a snake bite, made a friend in Rose, learned to shoot a gun, and felt for the first time in months like myself again. Not the self that Boston tried to make me. Not the self Marcus wanted me to be, but my true self. The woman who runs toward trouble. The woman who doesn't freeze. Sam sees that woman. sees her, and values her. It's dangerous, this feeling growing in my chest. I've been wrong about men before, but there's something different here, something honest. He doesn't want to save me. He wants to stand beside me while I save myself. Mother always said the frontier would either kill you or reveal you. Today, I think it began to reveal me. And I like what I'm seeing. Outside, a wolf howled, answered by another. But Clara didn't feel afraid. She felt alive, electric with possibility. Tomorrow, she'd practice shooting again. She'd check on Duchess. She'd work on the account book Sam had mentioned. She'd build this new life one day at a time, one choice at a time. And if Marcus Thornton showed his face, well, she'd be ready for that too. The woman who'd stood on that train platform 3 days ago, abandoned and desperate, was already becoming someone else, someone stronger, someone who didn't just survive, but fought back. The West was revealing her indeed, and Clara Mitchell was ready to meet whoever she was becoming. The decision came 3 weeks later on a Sunday morning when the sky threatened rain and the air felt heavy as wet wool. Clara was in the barn checking on Duchess's healing leg when she heard horses approaching, multiple horses moving fast. Sam appeared in the barn doorway, his rifle in hand, expression grim. "Stay inside. Lock the door." But Clara was already moving toward him, the Colt .45 he'd given her after their 10th lesson tucked in her apron pocket. Who is it? Could be nothing. Could be trouble. He studied the dust cloud approaching. Either way, I want you safe. Sam Hayes, if you think I'm hiding while you face whatever's coming alone, you haven't been paying attention these past weeks. Before he could argue, the riders came into view. 3 men, trail-worn and rough-looking, but it was the 4th rider hanging back slightly that made Clara's stomach drop. Marcus Thornton, clean-shaven, now wearing new clothes that suggested his con had found another victim, but unmistakably him. Even from a distance, she could see that practiced smile, the one that had charmed her through 14 months of letters. "Well, well," Marcus called out as they approached. "Clara, darling, I heard you'd found yourself a position." Sam stepped forward, rifle casual, but ready. "That's far enough, gentlemen. State your business." Marcus dismounted with theatrical ease, his companions staying on their horses. "My business is with my fiancé, Mr. Hayes. Clara and I have unfinished matters to discuss." "I'm not your fiancé," Clara said, stepping out from behind Sam despite his warning look. "You made that clear when you abandoned me at the station." "A misunderstanding," Marcus said smoothly. "I was called away on urgent business. I left you a letter explaining." "You left me with nothing," Clara cut him off. "No money, no prospects, no way home. That's not a misunderstanding. That's theft and abandonment." Marcus's smile tightened. "Now, Clara, let's not be dramatic. I've come to make things right. I've secured a very profitable opportunity in California. Gold mining. Investors are already lined up. I want you to come with me." "No." The word hung in the air, simple and final. Marcus blinked as if he hadn't quite heard right. "Clara, be reasonable. You can't seriously prefer this." He gestured dismissively at the ranch, to what I'm offering. "A chance at real wealth society culture." "I prefer honest work to dishonest promises," Clara said. "I prefer a man who keeps his word to one who trades in lies." Marcus's companions shifted restlessly on their horses. One of them, a scarred man with cold eyes, spoke up. "Thornton, we don't have time for this. Either she comes or she doesn't, but we've got that meeting in Cheyenne." "Shut up, Richards." Marcus snapped his polished veneer, cracking slightly. Then to Clara, his voice taking on an edge. "You have something that belongs to me." "I have nothing of yours." "Your mother's medical books. I paid for your passage out here that makes everything you brought community property." Sam laughed short and harsh. "That's not how the law works, friend. And even if it was, you'd have to go through me to take anything from this ranch." Marcus's hand moved toward his coat. Sam's rifle was pointed at his chest before he could blink. "I'd think real careful about your next move," Sam said quietly, the tension stretched taut, ready to snap. Then Clara did something unexpected. She laughed, not bitter or frightened, but genuinely amused. "You came all this way for my mother's medical books, Marcus, you fool. They're worth maybe $20 to the right buyer. You spent more than that on your new clothes." She stepped closer to him, close enough to see the surprise in his eyes. "But that's not really why you're here, is it? You're here because you can't stand that I survived, that I didn't crumble when you left me. You need me to need you, and I don't." Marcus's face flushed red. "You always thought you were better than everyone else. So proper, so educated. But look at you now, a servant on a backwater ranch, probably warming his bed for your keep." The sound of the slap echoed across the yard. Marcus staggered back, hand to his cheek, shock replacing anger on his face. "I am no one's servant," Clara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I work for my wages, honestly earned. And as for warming beds, that's rich coming from a man who seduced 3 women in Boston before moving on to me. Oh yes, I did some investigating of my own before leaving. Mrs. Garrett, Miss Simpson, the widow Carlyle, all left poor but wiser after knowing you." Marcus went pale. His companions were getting restless horses dancing nervously. Thornton Richards said again, "We're leaving. Now." Marcus looked between Claire and Sam, calculation in his eyes. Then he smiled, that practiced, charming smile that Clara now saw for the mask it was. "This isn't over," he said softly. "Yes, it is," Sam said. "You come near this ranch again, you'll be met with bullets, not words." "That's a promise." Marcus mounted his horse with less grace than he'd dismounted. As he turned to leave, he called back, "You'll regret this, Clara. Both of you will." They watched until the riders disappeared over the ridge. Only then did Sam lower his rifle. Only then did Clara realize she was shaking. "You all right?" "I slapped him," Clara said somewhat wonderingly. "I've never slapped anyone in my life." "He had it coming." "He did." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Sam, what he said about us, about me warming your bed, is nobody's business but ours." Sam finished. "And since it's not happening, there's nothing to discuss. But people will talk. Your reputation." "Clara." Sam turned to face her fully. "My reputation survived losing my wife and child. It survived 3 years of being a hermit. It can survive having a good woman working on my ranch." The word good made something warm bloom in Clara's chest. After everything, Marcus James, all her failures and mistakes, Sam still saw her as good. "There's something else," Clara said. "His companions. I recognize one of them. Richards. He's wanted in Massachusetts for bank robbery and murder. I saw his poster at the sheriff's office when I was reporting Marcus's initial fraud." Sam's expression darkened. "Then Thornton's moved up from con games to real crime. That changes things." They went inside, and Sam pulled out paper and ink. "We need to document this. Write down everything. When he arrived, what was said, who was with him. Rose knows the federal marshal in Cheyenne. We'll send word." As Clara wrote, Sam paced, thinking out loud. "He'll be back. Men like that don't like being rejected, especially publicly. And if he's running with killers now—" "I won't leave," Clara said without looking up from her writing. "If that's what you're thinking, I won't be driven off by threats." "Wasn't thinking that at all." Sam stopped pacing, stood beside her chair. "Actually, I was thinking the opposite." Clara set down her pen, looked up at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean—" Sam ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as nervousness. I think we should make this arrangement more permanent, more official." Clara's heart skipped. "Sam, hear me out." He pulled out a chair, sat facing her. "You need protection from Thornton, legal protection. And I need you here, Clara. These past 3 weeks, the ranch feels alive again. I feel alive again. Are you proposing marriage as a business arrangement?" "No." The word was firm, immediate. "I'm proposing marriage because when Thornton threatened you, I wanted to kill him. Because when you saved Duchess, I saw who you really are. Because when you laugh at Rose's jokes, or stand up to buyers trying to cheat us, or sit reading by the fire in the evening, this place feels like home again." Clara couldn't breathe. "Sam, I've been wrong about men before, catastrophically wrong. And I've lost everyone I've ever loved," Sam said quietly. "But Clara, what if we're both due for something good? What if all that pain was just preparing us for this? You barely know me. I know you run toward danger to help others. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know you treat Rose like a sister and Duchess like she matters. I know you've never once complained about the isolation or the hard work or the simple food." He reached out, took her hand carefully, like she might spook. "I know that when you smile, really smile, not the polite one you use for strangers, the whole room gets brighter." Clara looked at their joined hands, his so brown and scarred, hers pale, but no longer soft, bearing new calluses from 3 weeks of ranch work. "This is insane," she said. "Probably. We've known each other 22 days. 23, actually. People will say I'm a gold digger, that I planned this. Let them talk." Clara met his eyes, then searching for any sign of deception, any hint of the false promises she'd fallen for before. But Sam's eyes were steady, honest, patient. He wasn't trying to sell her anything. He was simply offering and waiting to see if she'd accept. "If we do this," Clara said slowly, "I have conditions." "Name them." "I keep working. I'm not going to be a decorative wife who sits in the parlor doing needlepoint. Wouldn't want that. Ranch needs you working. I continue my medical practice. People are already coming to me instead of Doc Harrison when he's drunk. I won't stop helping them." "Agreed. Honestly, it's good for the ranch's reputation." And Clara hesitated, then forged ahead. "We take time to know each other, to be sure. Marriage might be legal protection, but I won't share a bed with a stranger." Sam squeezed her hand gently. "Clara, I'm not Thornton. I'm not looking to take anything from you. We go as slow as you need. Separate rooms until you say otherwise. This is about partnership protection and," he paused, "and possibility. The possibility that two broken people might build something whole." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, the first tears she'd allowed since the train station. "When, tomorrow, if you're willing, Rose can witness. We'll do it proper in town, make it legal and public. That'll give you protection from Thornton and anyone else who might think you're an easy target." "Tomorrow." Clara tested the word. "Sam Hayes, you're asking me to marry you tomorrow. I'm asking you to take a chance, same as I did when I offered you that ride from town, same as you did when you got in my wagon." Clara thought about the past 3 weeks. How she'd fallen into the rhythm of ranch life like she'd been born to it. How she and Sam worked together with an ease that usually took years to develop. How safe she felt here, but more than safe, useful, valued, seen. She thought about her mother's words, "Never depend on a man for your happiness." But this wasn't about dependence. Sam wasn't rescuing her. They were choosing each other's scars and all. "Yes." She said the word, coming out stronger than expected. "Yes, I'll marry you tomorrow." Sam's smile was like sunrise after a long night. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed it gently, the first time he'd touched her with anything approaching romance. "We need to tell Rose," he said, "and get you a dress, and rings, and—" "Sam," Clara stopped him with a laugh. "We have less than 24 hours. Let's focus on the essentials." "Right, essentials." But he was still smiling, looking younger than she'd ever seen him. "Claire, I want you to know, this isn't about replacing Mary. What I had with her was one thing. This with you is something entirely different. But it's good. It's really good." "I know," Clara said, and realized she did. "This isn't about replacing anyone or recreating anything. This is about what comes next." That evening, Rose arrived in a whirlwind of excitement and practical planning. She'd brought a dress, ivory, not white simple, but elegant. "It was mine," she said. From when I thought Thomas and I might." She shook her head. "Anyway, it should fit with some alterations." As Rose pinned and stitched, she talked. "You know the whole town's going to lose their minds over this. Sam Hayes, the hermit of Hayes Ranch, marrying the mysterious Eastern woman after 3 weeks." 23 days, Clara corrected, echoing Sam. "Oh, Lord, you're already starting to sound like him." But Rose was smiling. "Clara, can I ask you something? Are you sure, really sure? Because Sam—" "If you hurt him." "I won't," Clara said firmly. "Rose, I've been lied to, abandoned, used. I know what that feels like, and I'd never do it to another person, especially not Sam." Rose studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you, and for what it's worth, I think this is the best thing that could happen to both of you. You make him human again, and he makes you—" "What? Fierce. Like you were always capable of being fierce, but needed someone to see it first." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Tomorrow she would marry a man she'd known for 23 days. Tomorrow her name would change. Her legal status would change. Her entire life would change. Again. She stepped onto the porch to find Sam sitting on his own porch, also unable to sleep. "Second thoughts," he called softly. "Third and fourth thoughts," Clara admitted. "But not doubts. There's a difference." "Want to talk about it?" Clara walked over, sat beside him on the porch steps. Above them, the Milky Way stretched like a river of light. "Tell me something true," she said. "Something you've never told anyone." Sam was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I still make coffee for 2 in the morning, automatically. Then I remember, and I pour the second cup out on the ground. Been doing it for 3 years." Clara absorbed this small, heartbreaking detail. Then she offered her own truth. "I write letters to my mother sometimes, tell her about my day, ask her advice. I know she can't answer, but I write them anyway." "Maybe that's what love is," Sam said quietly. "The habits that outlive the person. Then we're about to create new habits." "Yes." He looked at her sideways. "Clara Mitchell soon to be Clara Hayes. How does that sound?" "Like a fresh start," Clara said. "Like a second chance. For both of us." They sat in comfortable silence until the stars began to fade. Tomorrow would come soon enough with its ceremony and legalities and public declarations. But tonight, in this quiet moment, they had already made their promises. Not with words or rings or witnesses, but with the simple act of choosing to trust again, despite all the reasons not to. "Sam," Clara said as she finally stood to return to her cabin. "Thank you for seeing me, the real me." "Thank you," he replied, "for being worth seeing." Tomorrow, Clara thought as she walked back to her cabin, she would marry Sam Hayes. It was impulsive, probably inadvisable, certainly the talk of the territory. But it was also brave and honest and real. After months of lies and manipulation, she was choosing something true. Her mother had always said Clara ran toward trouble. Well, maybe this was trouble of a different sort. The trouble of opening a scarred heart. The trouble of building trust from scorched earth. The trouble of believing that sometimes, just sometimes, broken people could make each other whole. 23 days. Tomorrow would make 24. And Clara Hayes, yes, she liked the sound of that, would begin the rest of her life. The wedding had been simple, witnessed by Rose and Thomas Crow Feather, who'd risked public censure to stand beside the woman he loved. Judge Morrison had performed the ceremony with eyebrows raised so high they nearly met his hairline. But the marriage was legal binding and, most importantly, public. The whole town knew within hours that the abandoned Eastern woman was now Mrs. Samuel Hayes. That first night, as a married couple, they'd return to the ranch in awkward silence. True to his word, Sam had kissed her cheek after the ceremony and made no further advances. Clara had returned to her cabin, now technically the foreman's quarters, while Sam stayed in the main house. Married, but separate bound, but distant. The morning after the wedding, Clara woke to find a note slipped under her door. "Coffee's ready. We should talk about how this works." S. She found him in the kitchen, 2 cups poured, as promised, the morning light streaming through windows that needed washing. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, neither knew quite how to be with each other. Yesterday's certainty had given way to the reality of what they'd done. "Morning, Mrs. Hayes," Sam said, testing the words. "Morning, Mr. Hayes," Clara replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "So how does this work?" Sam had clearly been thinking about it. "We go on as we were, mostly. You keep your cabin if you want, or there's the spare room here in the main house. Might be easier for winter warmer, but that's your choice. And the ranch work. Our ranch now, legally speaking. You've got as much say as I do in decisions." He pulled out a ledger. "I figure we should go over everything together. Real numbers, real situation. No secrets between partners." Clara appreciated that more than he knew. Marcus had always been evasive about money, about plans, about everything really. Sam was laying it all out clear as water. "The ranch is profitable, but not by much," he explained, showing her the columns of figures. "Cattle prices have been down, and I lost some stock to wolves last winter, but we're stable, no debts except the usual accounts at the general store. What about expansion? Rose mentioned you'd been thinking about horses, not just cattle." "Been thinking, yes, but that takes capital I don't have. Would need better fencing, a proper breeding barn, and at least 2 good mares besides Duchess." Clara did quick calculations in her head. "What if we offered medical services for barter? I've already had 3 requests this week. Mrs. Patterson offered a milk cow for help with her pregnancy. The Millers have that stallion they can't afford to feed through winter." Sam looked at her with surprise and growing respect. "You're thinking like a rancher already." "I'm thinking like someone who survived Boston tenements. You use what you have to get what you need." They spent the morning planning, and it felt good natural even. By noon, they'd mapped out a strategy for the next year, combining traditional ranching with Clara's medical practice and Sam's horse training skills. "We make a good team," Sam said, closing the ledger. "We do," Clara agreed, then hesitated. "Sam, about last night." "You don't owe me anything, Clara. I meant what I said. We take this as slow as you need." "It's not that I don't." She paused, searching for words. "You're an attractive man. Kind, honest, everything Marcus wasn't. But I need to know this is real, not just reaction to crisis, or loneliness, or proximity." "I understand. Truth is, I need that too. Mary and I, we courted properly, took our time. When we finally came together, it meant something. I want that again, that meaning." Clara felt relief wash over her. "So we court, even though we're married. Why not we did everything else backwards? Might as well court backwards too." That afternoon, they had their first test as a married couple. Ed Patterson arrived his pregnant wife, laboring too early. Clara grabbed her medical bag while Sam hitched the wagon. They rode hard to the Patterson place, finding Agnes Patterson in distress, the baby coming too fast, positioned wrong. "Breech," Clara diagnosed quickly. "Sam, I need hot water, clean cloths, and all the lamps you can find. This is going to take steady hands and good light." For the next 3 hours, Clara worked to turn the baby, while Sam assisted without being asked, anticipating her needs. He held Agnes's hand when the pain was worse, kept Ed calm when the man wanted to panic, and never once flinched at the blood and intensity of birth. The baby finally came feet first, but breathing a tiny girl who announced her arrival with impressive lungs. Clara cleaned her, checked her thoroughly, then placed her in Agnes's exhausted arms. "She's small but strong," Clara announced. "Keep her warm, feed her often. I'll check on you tomorrow." Ed Patterson had tears streaming down his weathered face. "What do we owe you, Mrs. Hayes?" Before Clara could answer, Sam spoke up. "That milk cow you mentioned would square us, but only when you're ready. Family comes first." Outside, as they cleaned up at the pump, Ed pulled Sam aside. Clara could hear their conversation. "You married yourself a treasure, Sam Hayes." I know it. Does she know it? Sam glanced at Clara, who pretended not to be listening. I'm working on showing her. The ride home was quiet, but comfortable. The emergency had broken through the morning's awkwardness, reminded them why they worked well together. You were good in there, Clara said. Most men can't handle birthing. Delivered plenty of calves and foals. Not so different, though I'd never say that to Agnes. He paused. You were amazing, like you were born to do that work. My mother always said I had the hands for it, steady in crisis. That why you didn't become a proper nurse back east? Clara considered the question. Proper nursing requires proper training, which requires money I didn't have. And after Mother died, I just wanted to leave, start fresh somewhere. And you ended up here. I ended up here, Clara agreed. Funny how the worst thing that happened to me led to this. This being marriage to a broken-down rancher with more past than future. Clara looked at him sharply. Don't do that. Don't diminish what we're building here. Sam nodded, accepting the rebuke. You're right. Sorry. It's just, sometimes I can't believe you're real. That this is real. It's real, Clara said firmly, legally binding and everything. That evening, they ate dinner together in the main house. Clara had made stew from recipes Rose had left, and Sam had opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving. What were we saving it for? Clara asked. Originally Mary's birthday. Then I just kept saving it, waiting for something worth celebrating. And now I have something, someone. He raised his glass. To partnerships, business, and otherwise. Clara clinked her glass against his. To taking chances on broken people. After dinner, they sat by the fire. Sam in his chair, Clara on the small sofa with her mother's medical journal. The domesticity of it should have felt strange, forced, even. Instead, it felt like practice for something real. Read to me, Sam asked suddenly. I like your voice. Clara looked up surprised. Medical journals aren't exactly entertaining. Don't care. Just like hearing you. So she read about new techniques for treating infection, about carbolic acid and its uses, about theories of disease that were revolutionizing medicine. Sam listened, asking occasional questions that showed he was actually paying attention. Your mother must have been brilliant, he said when she paused. She was. Frustrated too. All that knowledge and skill, but limited in how she could use it because she was a woman. Clara traced the pages with one finger. She'd have loved it here, where need matters more than propriety. Would she have approved of me, I mean, this marriage? Clara considered. She'd have said I was crazy. Then she'd have looked at how you treat me, how you see me as capable rather than delicate. And she'd have approved, grudgingly, but still. I'd have liked to meet her. She'd have terrified you. She terrified everyone. Clara smiled at the memory. But she'd have respected you. You work with your hands, speak truth, take care of what's yours. She valued those things. A comfortable silence fell. Then Sam stood stretched. I should let you get to your rest. Long day tomorrow. The Hendersons want help with their barn raising. Our first social event as a married couple, Clara noted. That should be interesting. Folks will talk. Let them. We know what's true. Sam paused at the door to the spare room. Clara, thank you for taking this chance, for being patient with me while I remember how to be human again. Sam, she called as he turned to go. Would you kiss me goodnight? Just a kiss. Nothing more. He turned back, studied her face. Then he crossed the room, bent down and kissed her gently. Not on the cheek this time, but on the lips. Soft, careful, asking nothing, but offering everything. When he pulled back, Clara's eyes were still closed. That was nice, she said softly. It was, he agreed. Good night, Mrs. Hayes. Good night, Mr. Hayes. She stayed in her cabin that night, but something had shifted. The next morning, she moved some of her things to the spare room in the main house. Not everything, not yet. but enough to say she was trying enough to say this was home. The barn raising was exactly the social trial Clara had expected. Every woman in the territory seemed to need medical advice that required pulling Clara aside to also ask about her sudden marriage. How did it happen? Was she happy? Was Sam good to her? The questions came wrapped in concern but powered by curiosity. It was unexpected, Clara said to the fifth such inquiry, this from Mrs. Morrison, the judge's wife. But sometimes the best things are. And you're not troubled by his past. Poor Mary and little Jamie, such a tragedy. I'm not replacing them, Clara said firmly. I'm building something new with Sam, something different, but good. Meanwhile, Sam faced his own interrogation from the men, though theirs was more direct. She got you wrapped around her finger yet? Ed Patterson asked with a grin. If she does, I won't complain, Sam replied, surprising everyone with his easy admission. Never thought I'd see Sam Hayes married again, said Tom Henderson, especially not to a city woman. Clara's no ordinary city woman, Sam said, watching her across the barn as she helped organize the women's food tables. She can deliver a baby chute, a rattlesnake, and balance books better than any banker. If that's what cities are producing these days, we should all be grateful. The men laughed, but there was respect in it too. They'd all heard about the Patterson baby, about Clara's skill in saving both mother and child. The real test came when Marcus Thornton's name came up. Bill Morrison mentioned seeing him in Cheyenne with rough-looking men. Heard he tried to claim your wife, Bill said to Sam. Came to the ranch making demands. He tried, Sam said evenly. He failed. Also heard she slapped him in front of his men. She did. Good for her. Old man Garrett spoke up. Thornton tried to swindle my cousin in Denver. Man's a snake. Snake's useful sometimes, Sam said. Thornton's just a parasite. The barn went up despite the gossip, and by evening, the Hendersons had a new structure, and the community had thoroughly discussed the Hayes marriage. The consensus seemed to be cautious approval, though everyone was watching to see how it would turn out. On the ride home, Clara was quiet. Sam finally asked, regretting it, the publicity. No, Clara said slowly. Just thinking about belonging. I've never really belonged anywhere before. Boston was just where I lived, but here today, even with all the questions and stares, I felt part of something. You are part of something, part of the ranch, the community, part of... He hesitated, then continued, part of my life, our life. Clara reached over and took his hand where it rested on his knee. Our life. I like the sound of that. That night, for the first time, Clara slept in the main house. Still in the spare room, but under the same roof as her husband. She could hear him moving around getting ready for bed and found the sounds comforting rather than frightening. A week passed, then two. They developed rhythms. Coffee together at dawn, working separately during the day, but coming together for meals, evenings by the fire, where Clara read and Sam worked leather or mended tack. Slowly, carefully, they began to touch more. A hand on a shoulder, when passing, fingers brushing, when exchanging dishes, Sam's hand on Clara's back to guide her through a door. One evening, a month after their wedding, Clara found Sam standing by Mary and Jamie's graves. She'd known they were there, up on the hill behind the house, but had never intruded. Now seeing him there in the fading light, she felt called to join him. I'm sorry, she said softly. I can go. Stay, Sam said. I want you to stay. She stood beside him, looking at the simple wooden crosses. Mary Hayes' beloved wife and mother, James Samuel Hayes, forever for. I talk to them sometimes, Sam admitted. Tell them about the ranch, the cattle, the weather. Lately, I've been telling them about you. What do you tell them? That someone's making me laugh again. That the house doesn't echo anymore. That maybe it's okay to be happy without forgetting them. Clara slipped her hand into his. It is okay, Sam. They'd want you happy. Mary would have liked you, Sam said. She was always telling me I needed someone to challenge me, keep me from getting too set in my ways. And Jamie. His voice caught. Jamie would have loved your stories. You'd have been his Aunt Clara teaching him about medicine and far-off places. They stood in silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Finally, Sam turned to Clara. "I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. "Not the memory of someone else, not the idea of not being alone. You, Clara Mitchell Hayes, I'm falling in love with you." Clara's breath caught. "Sam, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Needed to say it here in front of them to make it real, to show it's not betrayal, but continuation. Life going on." Clara reached up, touched his face. "I'm falling too. Slower, maybe more careful, but falling just the same." He kissed her, then deeper than before, with promise and heat, and tomorrow all wrapped together. When they finally broke apart, the first stars were appearing. "Come to bed with me?" Sam asked. Not for that, not yet. Just to sleep beside me. I'm tired of reaching for someone who's not there." "Yes," Clara said simply. That night, she lay beside him in the bed he'd shared with Mary, but it didn't feel wrong. It felt like healing, like two broken people finding ways to fit their jagged edges together. Sam held her carefully, like she might disappear, and Clara let herself be held, let herself trust. "Thank you," Sam whispered into the darkness. "For what? For making this a home again. Not the same home, but home nonetheless." Clara turned in his arms, kissed him softly. "Thank you for giving me a place to belong." They fell asleep, like that, wrapped around each other while outside the Wyoming wind sang through the valley, and the stars stood witness to new beginnings built on the ashes of old endings. The first snow came early that year, October barely half gone, when Clara woke to a world transformed in white. She stood at the window of what was now truly their bedroom, watching fat flakes fall steady as prayers. Sam's arm curved around her waist from behind his chin, resting on her shoulder. "Winter's here," he said unnecessarily. "It's beautiful. It's dangerous. Changes everything about ranching. You ready for it?" Clara leaned back into his warmth. They'd been sharing a bed for 2 weeks now, though they still hadn't consummated the marriage. Each night brought them closer hands, learning the geography of scars and stories, but Sam waited for her signal, and Clara wasn't quite ready to give it. "I survived Boston winters. How much worse can it be?" Sam laughed low and rumbling. "Boston winters have stores and neighbors close by. Out here, we might not see another soul for weeks if the snow gets deep. Just us, the cattle, and whatever supplies we've laid in." A knock at the door interrupted them. Sam frowned. Too early for visitors, and in this weather. They dressed quickly. Clara grabbed her medical bag by instinct while Sam took his rifle. But when they opened the door, it wasn't trouble that greeted them. It was Rose supporting Thomas Crow Feather, who was bleeding from a gash across his forehead. "They came to his room last night," Rose said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "4 of them hoods over their faces like cowards. Said he had until sunrise to leave town or they'd hang him." "Who?" Sam demanded, though they all knew. "The so-called Concerned Citizens Committee, led by Sheriff Banks and banker Josiah Whitmore." "Doesn't matter." Thomas spoke for the first time, his voice cultured bitter. "They're white, I'm not. That's all the reason they need." Clara was already examining the wound. "This needs stitches." "Rose, did you bring—" "Everything's in my bag. I knew you'd help." Rose's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Sam, I didn't know where else to go." "You did right," Sam said firmly. "Thomas, you're welcome here as long as you need. Both of you are." "They'll come looking," Thomas warned. "I won't bring that trouble to your door." "Let them come," Sam said. "This is my land. I decide who's welcome." Clara finished cleaning the wound and began stitching with steady hands. Thomas never flinched, though it had to hurt. She'd learned from Rose that he'd been educated at Dartmouth, spoke 4 languages, and had returned west to help his people navigate the increasingly hostile relationship with white settlers. A foot in both worlds, welcome in neither. There, Clara said, tying off the last stitch. Keep it clean watch for infection. You're lucky it wasn't deeper. Lucky, Thomas repeated, touching the bandage gingerly. Yes, very lucky to be run out of town for the crime of loving a white woman. Thomas, Rose said softly, what should I pretend it's not what it is? Should I be grateful they only beat me a little? The bitterness in his voice was sharp enough to cut. Clara recognized it, the same tone she'd had after Marcus abandoned her. The sound of someone realizing the world's cruelty was personal. You should be angry, Clara said, surprising everyone. Fury is appropriate, but right now, you need to be smart. Sam, how long before they come looking? Sam considered. In this snow. Maybe a day, too, if we're lucky. They'll check the usual places first. Other Indian families, the old mining camps. Then we need a plan. Clara turned to Rose. Can you go back to town, act normally? I'm not leaving him. You have to. Thomas interrupted. If you disappear too, they'll know we're together. But if you're in town playing the concerned citizen worried about the dangerous Indian who threatened you, I won't. You will, Thomas said firmly, because it's the only way to keep everyone safe. Your brother's right to help us, but not at the cost of everything he's built. Rose looked between them all, then nodded slowly. Fine, but I'm coming back in 3 days, whether it's safe or not. After Rose left, they settled Thomas in the spare room. The snow continued to fall heavy and relentless, and Clara found herself grateful for its covering tracks, muffling sounds, making the world smaller and more private. That afternoon, while Thomas rested, Claire and Sam worked to prepare for what might come. They brought the horses into the barn, moved extra supplies into the house, loaded weapons, and placed them strategically. You know this could go bad, Sam said as they worked. I know. Could lose everything. The ranch, our reputation may be worse. I know. Sam stopped, looked at her. And you're okay with that? Are you asking if I'm okay with doing the right thing? Yes. Are you asking if I'm okay with standing up to bullies and bigots? Also yes. Clara met his gaze steadily. Sam, my mother treated everyone who needed help. Irish, Negro, Chinese. She said suffering doesn't check your pedigree before it visits. Neither should kindness. Sam kissed her, then hard and sudden. God, I love you. The words hung in the air. He'd said them before, but this time Clara answered, I love you too. That night, with Thomas sleeping fitfully in the next room, Clara finally gave herself fully to her husband. It wasn't the romantic wedding night of fairy tales. It was 2 people choosing each other in the face of danger, affirming life when death might be riding toward them through the snow. Sam was gentle but passionate, careful but eager, and Clara discovered that her body, like her heart, had been waiting for someone worth the trust. Afterward, they lay tangled together, listening to the wind howl outside. No regrets? Sam asked. None. You. Only that we waited so long. Clara laughed softly. We've been married 6 weeks. Feels like longer. Feels like you've always been here. The next morning brought visitors, but not the ones they expected. A small group of Arapaho, led by an elderly man Thomas greeted as uncle, though Clara doubted they were blood-related. They spoke in their language, rapid and urgent, while Sam and Clara stood aside. Finally, Thomas translated. My uncle says there's trouble coming, not just for me, for all of us. The committee has decided to clean up the territory. They're starting with mixed couples, but it won't end there. The old man spoke again, gesturing toward Clara. Thomas translated. He asks if the white woman with healing hands will help when the trouble comes. Tell him yes, Clara said without hesitation. The old man studied her for a long moment, then reached into his pouch and pulled out a small leather bag. He pressed it into Clara's hands, speaking softly. Medicine bundle, Thomas translated. For protection. He says you have a healer's spirit, that you'll need all the help you can get in the days coming. After the Arapaho left vanishing into the snow like ghosts, the three of them sat around the kitchen table. "We need allies," Clara said. "Sam, who in town, would stand with us. The Pattersons, definitely. I delivered their mail-order bride-daughter. Old man Garrett hates the committee. Maybe the Hendersons, though they're cautious." Doc Harrison, Thomas added unexpectedly. "He's a drunk, but he's not a bigot. Patched me up once, said skin color doesn't change how blood flows." "Rose could sound them out," Clara suggested, carefully. Over the next 2 days, they prepared. Thomas helped Sam with the cattle, proving himself capable despite his educated background. Clara organized medical supplies, knowing that if violence came, she'd be needed. The third night, Rose returned as promised, but not alone. She brought Agnes Patterson, Mrs. Henderson, and, surprisingly, Mrs. Morrison, the judge's wife. "We've come to help," Mrs. Morrison announced, as if daring anyone to question her. "Your husband," Sam began, "doesn't know I'm here, but he also doesn't know I've been helping the Chinese laundry family hide their earnings from the committee's taxes." She turned to Thomas. "Mr. Crow Feather, I don't approve of Rose's choice, not because of your race, but because romance is invariably disappointing. However, persecution is worse than disappointment, so here we are." Agnes Patterson was more direct. "Clara saved my baby. I'll stand with her against the devil himself if needed." They spent the evening planning. The women would create a network in town, passing information, providing alibis. Doc Harrison had agreed to claim Thomas was working as his assistant learning medicine, explaining his presence if questioned. "It's not a solution," Rose said. "It's just buying time." "Sometimes that's all you can do," Thomas replied, taking her hand despite the others watching. "Buy time and hope the world changes." "Or make it change," Clara added. 2 days later, the committee came. 5 men on horseback, Sheriff Banks and the lead banker Whitmore beside him. Sam met them in the yard, rifle casual but present. Clara stood on the porch, her medical bag visible, a reminder of her value to the community. "Hayes," the sheriff said, "heard you might be harboring a fugitive." "Fugitive from what?" Sam asked. "Has Thomas Crow Feather been charged with a crime threatening a white woman?" "Which woman?" Clara stepped forward. "Because Rose Hayes hasn't made any complaint." "Have you questioned her?" The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "She's obviously under his influence." "Indian magic?" Clara asked innocently. "How fascinating. I'd love to study that medically. Tell me, Sheriff, what are the symptoms of being under Indian influence? Fever rash? Sudden desire to be treated like a human being?" Whitmore spoke up. "Mrs. Hayes, you're new here. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Clara interrupted. "You're afraid that if one white woman can love an Indian man, others might start seeing them as people too. And then where would your superiority be?" "Watch your tongue, woman," Whitmore warned, "or what you'll run me out of town too. Who'll deliver your grandchild when your daughter's time comes? Doc Harrison drunk at noon. You'll threaten my husband. He's got friends among the cavalry from his army days. Want them looking into committee business." It was a bluff mostly, but Whitmore didn't know that. Sheriff Banks tried another approach. "Sam, be reasonable. You're harboring someone who doesn't belong here." "Everyone on my land belongs here if I say they do," Sam replied. "That's property law, Sheriff. You need a warrant to search, and Judge Morrison won't give you one without evidence of an actual crime." "Morrison's getting soft," Banks muttered. "Morrison follows the law," Sam corrected. "Maybe you should try it." The standoff stretched taut. Then from the barn, Thomas emerged. He walked steadily toward them, head high, despite the danger. "I'll come with you," he said. "No need to threaten these good people." "No," Rose's voice rang out. She rode up fast, having been watching from the ridge. "If you take him, you take me too." "Rose, don't," Thomas started. "I'm pregnant," Rose announced loud enough for all to hear. 3 months along. Thomas's child. So if you're running him off, you're running me off too. Your choice, gentlemen." The silence that followed was deafening. Clara saw the calculation in the men's faces. Rose was a Hayes from a respected family. She was the closest thing to a doctor many of them had. Running her off would have consequences. "You'd claim that bastard?" Whitmore asked, disgusted. "I'd claim my child and its father, yes," Rose said steadily. "And if that makes me unwelcome here, so be it." Sheriff Banks looked between them all, then at his men. Clara could see him weighing options, none of them good. Finally, he spoke. "Thomas Crow Feather, you've got 1 week to marry her proper. Legal. Then you're both someone else's problem. But any trouble, any complaint from anyone, an Indian or not married, or not, you'll hang." It wasn't victory, but it wasn't defeat either. The committee rode off, leaving them all standing in the yard like survivors of a storm. "Pregnant?" Sam asked Rose quietly. 6 weeks, she confirmed. "I was waiting for the right time to tell you all." Thomas pulled her into his arms, not caring who saw. "You magnificent, reckless woman." "I learned from the best," Rose said, looking at Clara. "Sometimes you have to make a stand, even if you're standing in quicksand." That evening, they all gathered in the main house. Sam and Clara Rose and Thomas the Patterson women, Mrs. Morrison, even Doc Harrison, who'd ridden out when he heard. To the future, Doc Harrison raised his glass, words slightly slurred, but sincere. "Whatever the hell it brings." To family, Sam added, looking around the room. "Blood and chosen both." To courage, Clara said. "The everyday kind that changes the world, one choice at a time." They drank. They planned. They hoped. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the tracks of the committee's horses, covering the old world in white, making room for something new. Later, as Clara and Sam prepared for bed, she asked, "Do you think we've won?" "No," Sam said honestly. "But we haven't lost either. Sometimes that's the best you can hope for." Rose and Thomas, their child. "It's going to be hard. Everything worth doing is hard." He pulled her close. "But they've got us. The baby will have us. That's something." Clara thought about the medicine bundle the old Arapaho man had given her, now hanging above their door. Protection, he'd said. But protection came in many forms. In community, in courage, in the choice to stand when kneeling would be easier. "Sam," she said into the darkness. "Yeah, I want children. Our children. Soon." She felt him smile against her hair. Yeah. This place, this family we're building, I want to fill it with life. New life mixed with all the complicated history proving that love is stronger than hate." Clara Hayes. Sam said, "You're either the bravest or craziest woman I've ever met." "Both," Clara said. "Definitely both." Outside, wolves howled in the distance, but inside, surrounded by chosen family and impossible love, they were safe. For now. And now was all anyone really had. The blizzard struck 3 days after Rose and Thomas's hasty wedding, performed by a reluctant Judge Morrison with Clara and Sam as witnesses. It came with the sudden violence of a cavalry charge, transforming the world into a howling white void within hours. Clara had been in the barn checking on a sick calf when the temperature dropped so fast, her breath turned to ice crystals in the air. She looked up to see a wall of white racing across the valley like God's own erasure. "Sam!" she screamed, but the wind stole her voice. She ran for the house, fighting against gusts that tried to knock her down. Sam met her at the door, pulling her inside just as the full force of the storm hit. "Where's Thomas?" Clara gasped. "Went to check the north pasture. Rose is..." "Here," Rose said from the doorway, snow already caking her clothes. "Thomas isn't back." Sam's face went grim. "How long ago did he leave?" 2 hours, maybe 3. Too long. In this storm, Thomas could be 50 feet from the house, and they'd never see him. Sam reached for his coat, but Clara stopped him. "You'll die out there. He's family now. Then we go together. Rose, string a rope from the porch to the barn. If we're not back in an hour, don't come looking." "Clara, someone has to survive this," Clara said firmly. "You're carrying the future." They tied themselves together with 20 feet of rope between them, took another coil for Thomas, and stepped into the white hell. The wind hit like a physical thing, driving ice needles into any exposed skin. Clara could barely see Sam 10 feet ahead of her. They fought their way toward the north pasture, following the fence line when they could find it. The cold was beyond description, beyond pain, becoming a numbness that Clara knew meant death if they didn't find Thomas soon. Then, through the howling white, she heard something. Not quite a voice, but a rhythm that didn't match the wind. She tugged the rope, pulling Sam toward the sound. They found Thomas huddled against a rock outcropping, barely conscious, his lips blue with cold. He'd been trying to shelter a calf, the stupid noble fool. "Can you walk?" Sam shouted over the wind. Thomas nodded, though Clara could see he was lying. She and Sam got on either side of him, and together they began the battle back to the house. The calf, against all sense, followed them, bumping against their legs, as if it knew they were its only chance. Halfway back, Thomas collapsed. Sam tried to lift him, but the wind knocked them both down. Clara knew they had minutes, maybe less. "The rope," she shouted. "Pull the rope." She yanked on the line connecting them to the house, 3 hard pulls, the emergency signal they'd agreed on. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then she felt an answering tug. Rose was pulling them in. Inch by inch, foot by foot, they were dragged through the snow. Clara kept her arms around Thomas while Sam shielded them both as best he could. The calf impossibly stayed with them. When they finally tumbled through the door, they were more ice than human. Rose had water-heating blankets ready. She worked with Clara to strip Thomas's frozen clothes while Sam secured the door against the screaming wind. His fingers, Rose said, her voice carefully controlled. "They're black. Frostbite. Severe." Clara had seen it in Boston when the poor froze in their tenements. Sometimes amputation was the only answer. "Not yet," Clara said. "We warm him slowly. If the tissue's not completely dead, it might recover." For the next hours, they worked to save Thomas's extremities. Lukewarm water gradually warmed, gentle massage to restore circulation. Thomas screamed when feeling returned. A good sign, Clara said, though it didn't feel good to anyone listening. Meanwhile, the storm raged on. The windows were white sheets of nothing. The house creaked and groaned under the assault. And somewhere in the middle of that first terrible night, the roof of the barn began to fail. They heard it over the wind, a cracking, tearing sound like the world breaking. Sam grabbed a lantern, peered out the window, and cursed. The barn's coming apart. The animals will die if it collapses. Clara finished. "How many are in there?" "Duchess, 3 other horses, 6 milk cows, and the chickens, but they're probably already gone." Clara did quick calculations. They could maybe fit the horses in the house, but the cows. "The cellar," she said suddenly. "It's big enough, and the separate entrance means we won't have to take them through the house. You want to put cattle in our cellar. I want to keep them alive. We'll need them when this is over." So in the middle of the worst blizzard Wyoming had seen in decades, they ran a rescue operation. Using every rope they had, they created a guideline to the barn. Sam and Clara went while Rose stayed with Thomas, who was delirious with fever now, his body fighting to save itself. The barn was failing faster than expected. The roof had partially caved, and snow was pouring in. The animals were panicked, dangerous. Duchess recognized Sam's voice came to him, but the others were wild with fear. It took everything they had. Clara got kicked by a cow, her ribs screaming, but kept working. Sam's hands were bleeding from handling frozen ropes, but he didn't stop. One by one, they led the animals through the howling storm to safety. The last cow, the ornery one they'd named Stubborn Sue, refused to move. The barn was actively collapsing around them. Clara could hear the beams cracking. "Leave her," Sam shouted. "No." Clara grabbed a handful of hay, shoved it in front of Sue's nose, and walked backward. Miraculously, the cow followed. They made it out just as the barn roof came down completely, the sound lost in the storm's roar. In the cellar, they packed the animals in tight. It smelled like a barnyard, but the animals' body heat actually helped warm the space. Duchess Noble, as always, stood calm while the cows lowed their distress. Back in the house, they found Thomas worse. His fever had spiked, and he was muttering in Arapaho, occasionally crying out. Rose held his hand, her face a mask of controlled terror. The baby, Clara asked quietly, still moving, still there. But if Thomas dies... Rose didn't finish. Didn't need to. He won't die, Clara said with more confidence than she felt. I won't let him. The storm lasted 4 days. 4 days of white nothing of wind that sounded like the world ending. They rationed food, melted snow for water, burned furniture when the wood ran low. The animals in the cellar had to be mucked out twice a day, a foul job that Sam and Clara took turns with. On the second day, Thomas's fever broke, but his fingers were still black. Clara made the decision she'd been dreading. 2 fingers have to come off, she told Rose. The tissue is dead. If we don't remove them, the rot will spread. Rose nodded, her face pale but determined. Do it. Clara had read about amputation, had seen her mother do it once, but doing it herself was different. Sam held Thomas down, conscious now and trying to be brave. Rose held his other hand, talking to him in a steady stream of love and nonsense. Clara cut. Quick clean with the sharpest knife they had sterilized in boiling water. 2 fingers from his left hand just below the second knuckle. Thomas passed out from the pain a mercy. She cauterized the wounds with a heated iron, the smell making them all gag. Then bandages, prayers, and hope. On the 3rd day, they ran out of coffee. It seemed a small thing, but Sam looked genuinely bereft. 4 years I've never run out of coffee, he said. You've never been snowed in with a pregnant woman, a wounded man, and a cellar full of cattle either, Clara pointed out. Fair point. That night, huddled together for warmth, Sam asked, You think we'll make it? We'll make it, Clara said. We have to. Rose needs us. Thomas needs us. Hell's stubborn Sue needs us. That cow's too mean to die. So are we. On the 4th morning, Clara woke to silence. The absence of wind was so profound, it felt like a presence itself. She looked out of the window and saw blue sky, brilliant sun, and a world transformed into pristine white sculpture. It's over, she breathed. They dug their way out, finding drifts up to the roof in some places. The barn was gone, scattered lumber under tons of snow. But the house stood. They'd survived. It took another day to dig a path to check on the animals. Duchess nickered when she saw Sam, and even stubborn Sue seemed pleased to see them. They'd lost the chickens, but saved everything else. Thomas's hand was healing clean, no sign of infection. He'd have to learn to work differently, but he'd live. Rose's baby still moved within her strong, despite everything. We need to check on the neighbors, Sam said once they'd secured their own situation. It took them 3 days to reach the Patterson place, following ridgelines where the wind had scoured the snow thinner. They found the family alive but desperate. Their barn had collapsed too, killing most of their stock. Claire and Sam shared what they could, promising more help when the roads cleared. At each ranch they visited, the story was similar. Survival, but at a cost. The Hendersons had lost their eldest son caught outside when the storm hit. The Millers had burned most of their furniture and were huddled in one room. Doc Harrison they found frozen in his bed, a bottle of whiskey beside him. Whether he'd drunk himself to death or simply frozen, they'd never know. We're the closest thing to a doctor now, Sam told Clara as they stood over Harrison's body. I know. When they finally made it to town 2 weeks after the storm, they found devastation. The bank had collapsed, Whitmore trapped inside. They'd found his body after 3 days of digging. Sheriff Banks had lost 3 toes to frostbite and was talking about moving back east. But there were miracles too. The Chinese laundry family had survived by burning coal they weren't supposed to have. The saloon had become a shelter, Big Pete the bartender keeping people alive with his private stock of food and liquor. Judge Morrison called a town meeting in what was left of the church. "We've lost 12 souls," he announced, "including our banker, our doctor, and 3 children. We've lost most of our livestock, half our buildings, and all of our stored grain." The crowd murmured despair, settling like another kind of snow. "But," Morrison continued, "we survived. And we survived because we helped each other. Hayes shared his cattle. Mrs. Hayes, both Mrs. Hayes women, provided medical care. Thomas Crow Feather lost fingers saving Henderson's boy from a drift. The Chinese family shared their coal. Big Pete opened his doors." He paused, looking around the room. "I've been judge here for 15 years. I've seen us divide ourselves by color, by creed, by class. But that storm didn't care about any of that, and neither should we." He turned to where Thomas sat with Rose, his bandaged hand visible. "Mr. Crow Feather, this town owes you a debt. As of today, any talk of forcing you out will be met with the full force of law. You're one of us now. You all are." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Prejudice didn't die just because a storm had threatened everyone equally. But it was a start a crack in the wall that had divided the community. That night back at the ranch, they held their own celebration of survival. Sam had found 1 bottle of wine that hadn't frozen, and they passed it around. Sam and Clara Rose and Thomas. "To making it through," Sam toasted. "To losing fingers but keeping lives," Thomas added with dark humor. "To the baby who survived it all," Rose said, hand on her belly. "To family," Clara said. "The kind you choose, and the kind that chooses you." They drank, and outside the world began its slow thaw. Water dripped from icicles, the sound like nature's own music, after so much silence. "We'll need to rebuild the barn," Sam said. "We'll need to rebuild everything," Clara corrected. "But we'll do it together." "Together," the others echoed. Later, as Claire and Sam lay in their bed, she asked, "Do you think we're stronger for having survived this?" "I think we're different," Sam said after consideration. "Not stronger, maybe, but more proven. We know what we can endure now." "And what we can't lose," Clara added, pressing closer to him. "What can't we lose? Each other, this family we've built, this life." Sam kissed her forehead. "The storm tried to take it all, but it didn't. We didn't let it." "No," Sam agreed. "We didn't." Outside, a wolf howled, not the threatening sound of winter, but something almost mournful, as if even the predators mourned what had been lost. But in the house, warmed by bodies and bonds that had been tested by ice and wind and death itself, they were safe. The crisis had passed. Now came the rebuilding. And Clara knew with the certainty of someone who had faced the worst nature could offer and survived that what they'd build would be stronger than what had been destroyed. The blizzard had tried to erase them. Instead, it had revealed them, their courage, their connections, their capacity to endure. And in that revelation was the seed of everything that would come next. Spring came late that year, as if the earth itself needed time to recover from winter's violence. Clara stood in what had been the barn, now just a foundation of stones and memories, watching Sam and Thomas work alongside men from town to raise new walls. Her hand rested on her own belly, where 3 months of new life grew, conceived in those dark days after the blizzard, when creating life seemed the only answer to so much death. "You shouldn't be lifting," Rose called from where she sat on a barrel, her own pregnancy now showing prominently at 7 months. "I'm pregnant, not broken," Clara replied, but set down the timber she'd been carrying. The barn raising was different from the one last fall. No separation between white men and Thomas. No whispered gossip about the Hayes Ranch harboring undesirables. The blizzard had reorganized the town's priorities, and survival had trumped prejudice, at least publicly. Sheriff Banks had indeed gone back east, his damaged feet and damaged pride too much to bear. His replacement, a young man named William Carter from Colorado, had no interest in enforcing social boundaries that had nothing to do with law. Mrs. Hayes, Banker Whitmore's widow, approached. Elizabeth Whitmore had surprised everyone by staying after her husband's death, taking over the bank with a combination of hidden steel and careful diplomacy. "Might I speak with you privately?" Clara followed her to the shade of the cottonwoods, now budding with spring green. "I owe you an apology," Elizabeth said without preamble. "My husband's attitudes, his actions toward Mr. Crow Feather and your sister-in-law, I knew and said nothing. You were his wife. Speaking against him would have cost you everything." "Yes, but silence cost others more." Elizabeth pulled out an envelope. "I've been going through Josiah's papers. I found this. A deed transfer he never filed. Your husband owns more land than he knows. The entire North Valley, actually. Josiah was planning to claim it through forfeiture, but he never completed the paperwork." Clara took the envelope, stunned. This is 500 acres. Enough for the horse ranch Sam's always dreamed of. Consider it partial payment for what this town owes your family." Before Clara could respond, a shout went up from the barn. Not alarm, celebration. The main beam was going up the skeleton of their rebuilt life, taking shape against the sky. "Thank you," Clara said simply. "Don't thank me. Just build something better than what we had." That evening, they celebrated the barn frame with a feast. Tables made of planks and sawhorses stretched across the yard, laden with food the community had somehow scraped together. Claire had made her mother's Irish stew recipe adapted with venison and prairie vegetables. Rose had baked bread, kneading carefully, with Thomas helping when her back ached. As the sun set, painting the mountains gold, Judge Morrison stood to speak. "We've been through hell and come out the other side. Not unchanged. We've lost too much for that. But we're here, and I want to make something official." He pulled out a document. "I'm appointing Clara Hayes as the official medical practitioner for the territory. It's not a doctorate, but it's legal recognition of what we all know. She's the best we've got." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother would have been so proud. "And Thomas Crow Feather," Morrison continued, "is hereby appointed official translator and mediator between the town and the tribal communities. Paid position recognized by the territorial government." Thomas stood slowly, his damaged hand visible but steady. "Why?" "Because the blizzard taught us something. We survive together or we die alone. The Arapaho knew the storm was coming, tried to warn us. We didn't listen because we were too proud to hear wisdom from Indian voices. That stops now." As applause rippled through the gathering, Marcus Thornton arrived. The music stopped. Hands moved to weapons. Sam stepped forward, but Clara caught his arm. Marcus looked different. Gaunt, travel-worn, his fine clothes replaced with practical canvas and wool. He walked slowly toward them, hands visible and empty. "I'm not here for trouble," he said. "Then why are you here?" Sam's voice was cold as winter wind. "To make amends. Or try to." Marcus reached into his coat. Several guns cleared leather and pulled out a leather pouch. "Everything I took from Clara, plus interest." Clara stared at the pouch. "Why?" "Because Richards is dead. Shot trying to rob a bank in Denver. Because I've spent months running, lying, stealing, and it led nowhere good. Because I heard about the blizzard, about what you all did, and I realized." He paused, seeming to search for words. "I realized I've never built anything, only torn down." "Pretty words," Thomas said. "But words are easy." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "So here's action." He pulled out another paper. "Signed confession. Every person I've swindled, every crime I've committed. Sheriff Carter has a copy. If I ever come back to Wyoming, I'll hang." He set the pouch and paper on the table in front of Clara. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But you deserve the truth, and your money returned." Clara looked at the man who'd abandoned her at the train station. She could see Sam tensing beside her, ready for violence. The crowd waited for her response. "Marcus," she said finally, "do you know what you actually gave me?" He looked confused. "I took everything. You gave me this life, Clara interrupted. By abandoning me, you forced me to be brave. By stealing from me, you taught me to build my own security. By lying to me, you showed me what truth looks like. She stood, one hand on her growing belly. I'm carrying Sam's child. I'm recognized as a healer. I have family, real family. None of that would have happened if you'd kept your promises. Marcus's face crumpled slightly. I'm glad something good came from my failures. Leave, Clara said, not unkindly but firmly. Take your guilt and go build something somewhere else. Maybe you'll surprise yourself. Marcus nodded, turned to go, then looked back. That slap you gave me, I deserved worse. Yes, Clara agreed. You did. After he left, the celebration slowly resumed, though subdued. Sam pulled Clara aside. You let him go. Revenge would have felt good for a moment, but we're building a future here. His money will help. His absence will help more. You're a better person than me. No, Clara said. Just someone who's learned that holding on to anger is like holding on to hot coal. You're the only one who burns. 2 weeks later, Rose went into labor. It was long difficult. The baby turned wrong. Clara worked through the night, Thomas holding Rose's hand, Sam boiling water and fetching supplies. I can't, Rose gasped after 10 hours. You can, Clara said firmly. You survived the blizzard. You stood up to the whole town. You can do this. The baby is strong, like its parents. It took another 4 hours, but finally a cry pierced the dawn. A boy small but perfect with his mother's eyes and his father's sharp cheekbones. What will you name him? Clara asked, cleaning the infant carefully. Samuel, Thomas said, looking at his brother-in-law. Samuel Thomas Crow, Feather Hayes. Sam's eyes filled with tears. That's a big name for a small boy. He'll grow into it, Rose said, exhausted but radiant. The baby's birth seemed to trigger spring properly. Within days, the valley exploded with wildflowers. The grass grew thick and green. The surviving cattle grew fat, and Duchess surprised them all by proving to be pregnant. Apparently, a stallion had visited during the chaos of the blizzard. Clara's own pregnancy progressed smoothly. She continued working, treating everything from broken bones to difficult births. The medicine bundle the old Arapaho man had given her hung in her treatment room, and sometimes indigenous families would come specifically to see the white healer who carried native protection. One day in late May, the old man himself returned. He spoke to Thomas at length while Clara examined his arthritic hands. Finally, Thomas translated. He says the child you carry will be a bridge. Between what? Worlds, times, peoples. He says the blizzard was necessary like fire that clears old growth for new forest. The old man reached out and touched Clara's belly, gently speaking again. A daughter, Thomas translated. Strong like her mother, wise like her father. She will heal more than bodies. That night, Clara told Sam about the prophecy. A daughter, he said wonderingly. I had a son before. A daughter would be different. Disappointed? No. Terrified. Boys, I understand. Girls are mysterious. Clara laughed. I'm a girl. You're a force of nature. That's different. June brought the barn completion, the horse breeding program's beginning, and Clara's water breaking 3 weeks early. The labor was swift, almost violent in its intensity. Rose and Mrs. Morrison attended, while Sam paced outside like a caged wolf. Stop pushing! Clara gasped to Rose at one point. I need to not push. That's like telling the sky not to rain, Rose said. Your body knows what to do. 4 hours after it began, Margaret Sarah Hayes was born, screaming with impressive fury at the indignity of birth. She had Sam's dark hair and Clara's stubborn chin. Margaret for your mother, Sam said, holding his daughter for the first time. Sarah for mine. Maggie, Clara said. We'll call her Maggie. The baby opened her eyes, bright blue that would likely darken to brown, and seemed to look directly at her father. Hello, little one, Sam whispered. I'm your papa. I promise to keep you safe." "We both promise," Clara corrected. Summer bloomed full and generous. The ranch prospered with the new land, the horse program, and Clara's medical practice. Thomas learned to work around his missing fingers, becoming invaluable as a mediator when conflicts arose between settlers and tribes. One evening in July, as they sat on the porch watching Maggie sleep in her basket, Sam said, "We did it." "Did what?" "Rebuilt. Better than before." Clara looked around. At the new barn, the thriving gardens, Rose and Thomas's cabin newly built on the property, the horses grazing in the distance. "We did, didn't we? Do you miss it, Boston? The life you were supposed to have," Clara considered. "I miss my mother. I miss some of the conveniences. But that life feels like a story someone else lived. This is real. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The difficult things are what prove we're alive." August brought visitors, a photographer from back east documenting frontier life. He wanted to capture the authentic West. "What makes you authentic?" he asked Clara as he set up his equipment. "Survival," she said simply. The photograph he took that day would become famous years later. Clara in her work dress, medical bag in one hand, Maggie on her hip, standing in front of the barn they'd built from catastrophe. But what the image couldn't capture was the network of connections spreading from that spot. Rose and Thomas proving love could cross any boundary the town learning to see. Beyond old prejudices, the ranch becoming a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. September arrived with golden light and cool mornings. The harvest was generous, the cattle healthy, the horses beginning to gain reputation across the territory. One morning, Clara found Sam at Mary and Jamie's graves, Maggie in his arms. "Introducing them," he explained, slightly embarrassed. "That's good," Clara said, joining him. "They're part of her history. I want her to know about them, but also to know she's not a replacement. She's her own person, her own story. She will be. Look at her, already trying to grab everything in reach." Indeed, Maggie was reaching for the flowers Clara had planted around the graves, her chubby fingers grasping at color and life. "Mary would have loved her," Sam said quietly. "Then love her twice as much," Clara suggested. "Once for you, once for Mary." That afternoon, a letter arrived from Marcus Thornton, brief, unsigned, but unmistakably his handwriting, building a school in Arizona territory, teaching reading and arithmetic to mining camp children. It's not redemption, but it's construction instead of destruction. Thank you for showing me the difference. M. Clara burned the letter, but kept the thought. People could change. Sometimes catastrophe was just the prelude to creation. The first frost came early October, silvering the grass like nature's jewelry. Clara stood in the doorway of their bedroom, watching Sam teach Maggie to laugh, making ridiculous faces that sent the baby into giggles. "Happy?" Sam asked, catching her watching. "Complete," Clara corrected. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Happy is a feeling. Complete is a knowing." "Knowing what? That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." That night, as early snow began to fall, gentle this time, nothing like the blizzard, they gathered for Sunday dinner. Sam and Clara Rose and Thomas with little Samuel the Pattersons, Mrs. Morrison, even Sheriff Carter and his new bride from Denver. A toast, Judge Morrison proposed, raising his glass. "To the families we're born into and the ones we build." "To second chances," Mrs. Morrison added. "To survival," Thomas said, his damaged hand resting on his son's head. "To the future," Rose contributed. "To home," Sam said, looking at Clara. To bridges, Clara finished thinking of the old Arapahoe's prophecy. The ones we build and the ones we become. They drank, they laughed, they planned for tomorrow. Outside, the snow fell soft as benediction, covering the scars of last winter's violence, preparing the ground for another spring. The ranch stood strong against the weather, rebuilt from disaster, improved by hardship. And inside, warmed by fire and fellowship, the unlikely family that catastrophe had created continued the eternal work of living, building, becoming. Clara looked around the table at these people who'd become her world. A year ago, she'd stood abandoned on a train platform. Now she stood at the center of a life she'd never imagined but couldn't imagine living without. Rebirth, she thought, wasn't about replacing what was lost. It was about building something new from the pieces that remained, something stronger for having been broken, something beautiful for having been reformed. The old life was ashes, but from ashes, Clara had learned, came the richest soil, and in that soil, watered with tears and warmed by love, the most unexpected gardens could grow. 5 years had passed since Clara Mitchell stood abandoned on that train platform. 5 years since a broken cowboy offered a desperate woman a ride to nowhere that became everything. Now, on a brilliant September morning in 1892, Clara stood in that same spot at Laramie Station, but everything else had changed. She wore a practical dress of her own design, her medical bag in one hand, her other hand holding 6-year-old Maggie, whose dark eyes missed nothing. Beside her, Sam held 2-year-old James, named for the son he'd lost, but living his own bright life. Rose stood with Thomas and their children, Samuel now 5 and sharp as winter wind, and 3-year-old Mary, who had her father's quiet strength and her mother's fierce heart. They were waiting for a train, but not to leave. They were welcoming a new doctor freshly graduated from medical school, back east recruited to help Clara with the growing practice that now served 3 counties. "Is she pretty?" Maggie asked for the 3rd time. "Doesn't matter if she's pretty," Clara said. "What matters is if she's competent." "What's competent mean?" "Good at her job." "Like you. Hopefully better than me. I want to learn from her, too." The train whistled its approach, and Clara felt Sam's hand find hers. His fingers were rougher now, 5 more years of ranch work carved into the calluses, but his touch was still gentle. "Nervous?" he asked. "Excited," Clara corrected. "Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell's own student coming here. Mother would be so proud." The train pulled in with its familiar drama of steam and noise. Passengers disembarked, and then Clara saw her. Dr. Sarah Chen, Chinese-American, 30 years old, carrying her own medical bag like armor against the world's doubts. She looked exactly as nervous and determined as Clara had felt 5 years ago. "Dr. Chen." Clara stepped forward. "I'm Clara Hayes. Welcome to Laramie." Sarah Chen's face transformed with relief. "Dr. Hayes, thank you for this opportunity. I know my background might cause complications." "Your background is excellent medical training and a recommendation from Dr. Blackwell herself," Clara said firmly. "Anyone who has a problem with that can find another doctor, though they'll have to travel 40 miles to do it." Thomas stepped forward, speaking in Mandarin. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, and she responded in kind. They conversed briefly. Then Thomas turned to the others. "I've told her she has friends here, that we understand what it's like to be different." "Different is good," Rose added, bouncing her daughter. "Different saved this town." As they loaded Sarah's belongings onto the wagon, Maggie tugged on the new doctor's skirt. "My mama delivers babies and fixes broken bones, and once she saved a man who got bit by a rattlesnake." "Did she now?" Sarah smiled down at the child. "She did. And Papa says she's the bravest person in the whole territory." "Are you brave?" Sarah glanced at Clara, then back at Maggie. "I'm trying to be." "That's good enough," Maggie declared with 6-year-old authority. "Trying is how you start." The ride to the ranch was filled with conversation. Sarah had trained at the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, fought for every opportunity, faced down prejudice that made Clara's struggles look simple. "Why Wyoming?" Sam asked. "You could practice in San Francisco with the Chinese community there." "Because Dr. Blackwell told me about Dr. Hayes' letter about a place where competence mattered more than convention. And because..." Sarah paused, choosing words carefully. "Because I want to be part of building something new, not just fitting into something old." Well, you've come to the right place for building, Thomas said, gesturing at the valley spreading before them. The ranch had transformed in 5 years. Where one barn had stood now, 3 marked the landscape. The horse breeding program had become legendary across the territory. Hayes' horses were known for stamina, intelligence, and heart. The main house had been expanded, a medical clinic added to one side where Clara and now Sarah would practice. Rose and Thomas's cabin had grown too, with rooms for their expanding family. But the biggest change was the school. It stood on the rise, overlooking the valley, built with lumber from the old barn that had collapsed in the blizzard, mixed with new wood, bought with Marcus Thornton's returned money. 22 students attended, ranging from 6 to 16, white and Indian and Chinese, the children of ranchers and farmers, and the few miners who'd stuck around after the silver played out. "You built a school," Sarah marveled. "The community built it," Clara corrected. "We just provided the land and the push." "And the teacher," Rose added. "Clara teaches 3 days a week, basic medicine, reading, arithmetic." "An integrated school," Sarah said slowly. "The newspapers back east would be scandalized." "The newspapers back east aren't raising children out here," Sam said. "We are, and we want them raised to see each other as neighbors, not enemies." That evening, they held a welcome dinner for Sarah. The Patterson family came, Agnes's miracle baby, now 5 and healthy as a horse. Judge Morrison and his wife attended, older now, but still sharp. Sheriff Carter brought his wife and their twin boys. Even the old Arapaho medicine man made an appearance, though he spent most of the evening playing some complicated hand game with Thomas's children. As the sun set, painting the mountains gold, Clara stood on the porch, watching the gathering. Sarah was deep in conversation with Rose about childbirth complications. Sam was teaching the younger boys how to rope their laughter bright as bells. Maggie had organized the children into some elaborate game that seemed to involve both tag and storytelling. "Regrets?" a voice asked. Clara turned to find Elizabeth Whitmore, grayer now, but still formidable. "About any of it. The hasty marriage, staying here instead of returning east when you could have, building all this in a place that didn't exactly welcome you at first." Clara considered the question seriously. "I regret not writing to my mother more when she was alive. I regret not seeing Marcus for what he was sooner. But the rest, no. This life, these people, this place, it's who I was always meant to be. I just had to travel a long, hard road to find it. Your mother would be proud." "I hope so. I know so. You've done what she couldn't, practiced medicine openly, legally, built a legacy that will outlast you." Elizabeth moved away, and Sam took her place, sliding his arm around Clara's waist. "Happy?" he asked their old question. Complete, she gave their traditional answer, then added, "and grateful. For you having the courage to offer a ride to a desperate stranger, for having the patience to let me heal, for building this with me, not for me. Clara, you saved me as much as I saved you." "I know. That's what makes it perfect." "Mutual rescue," Thomas called out from the yard. "Speech. The new doctor should give a speech." Sarah looked terrified, but Clara nudged her forward. "Go on. They don't bite. Usually." Sarah stood on the porch steps, looking out at the assembled crowd. Rough ranchers, proper towns, women, Indian families, Chinese miners, children of every shade and story. "I came here," Sarah began, her voice gaining strength, "because I heard about a place where a woman could be a doctor without apology, where an Indian man could marry a white woman and raise their children in peace, where a community chose cooperation over division." She paused, looking at Clara. "I came here because Dr. Hayes wrote that Wyoming was a place where the future was being written by people brave enough to reject the past's limitations. I hope to be brave enough to help write that future with you." Applause rang out, and old man Garrett called out, "Just keep us alive long enough to see it." Laughter followed, then music, as someone brought out a fiddle. Dancing began, the kind of dancing that didn't care about proper steps, just joy and movement and life. As the party continued, Clara found herself walking toward the small cemetery on the hill. Mary and Jamie's graves were still there, but now they were joined by others. Doc Harrison, some who'd died in the blizzard babies, who'd come too early despite Clara's best efforts. She maintained all of them, keeping the flowers fresh, the stones clean. Footsteps behind her. Sam, of course. He always knew when she needed company on these contemplative walks. "Do you think they know?" Clara asked. "Mary and Jamie, do you think they know about the life we've built?" "I think," Sam said slowly, "that love doesn't die. It just changes form. Mary's love for life lives on in how I've learned to love again. Jamie's curiosity lives on in how we teach the school children. And the others, the ones who didn't make it. They're part of the foundation. Every life that ends here makes the remaining lives more precious, more determined to matter." They stood quietly for a moment. Then Clara said, "I want to expand the medical practice, train nurses from the local women, maybe even start a proper hospital eventually." "Of course you do," Sam said with a smile. "You've never met a challenge you didn't want to accept." "Is that a yes?" "That's a whatever you need. We'll build it together." They walked back toward the party hand in hand. The music had gotten livelier, and Maggie was teaching Dr. Chen some sort of spinning dance that looked more like controlled falling. "Papa!" James called out, running to them with his 2-year-old waddle. "Up!" Sam scooped him up, settling him on his shoulders. The boy gripped his father's hair like reins, giggling. "Your turn," Rose said, appearing with baby Mary. "I need to dance with my husband while I still can." Clara took her niece, the weight of the child, familiar and right. She watched Rose and Thomas dance, ignoring the few remaining stares their union still drew. Watched Agnes Patterson teaching Sarah the steps to a frontier reel. Watched Sheriff Carter's boys playing with Thomas's children. No awareness of the boundaries their parents' generation had built, and these children were tearing down. "A toast," Judge Morrison called out, raising his glass once more. The music stopped, everyone turning toward him. 5 years ago, this community nearly tore itself apart over differences. A blizzard showed us how foolish that was. These people. He gestured toward Clara and Sam, Rose, and Thomas, and now Sarah, showed us another way. Not easy, not without cost, but better. He raised his glass higher. To the Hayes Ranch, which has become what America claims to be, but rarely is. A place where anyone can build a life based on merit, not birthright. "Hear, hear," the crowd responded, but Clara raised her own voice. "To the community that gave us the chance to build, to the neighbors who chose courage over comfort, to the children who'll grow up thinking this is normal and wonder why the rest of the world doesn't work this way. To the future," someone called out. "To home," Sam said quietly, but Clara heard him. As the party wound down and guests began departing, Clara helped Sarah settle into what had been Clara's original cabin, now updated and comfortable. "Any advice?" Sarah asked as Clara helped her unpack her medical supplies. "Trust yourself, but keep learning. Listen more than you talk. Never let them see you're afraid, even when you're terrified. And remember, every person who doubts you is motivation to prove them wrong. Is it worth it? All the fighting, the proving, the constant battle to be taken seriously." Clara thought of her journey. From abandoned woman to respected doctor, from desperate stranger to cornerstone of a community. "Every moment," she said firmly, "because we're not just healing bodies, we're healing the future. Making it possible for the next woman, the next outsider, the next different one to have an easier path." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Dr. Blackwell said you were remarkable." "Dr. Blackwell never met me." "No, but she read your letters, your articles in the medical journals. She said anyone who could build what you've built here understands that medicine is about more than physical healing." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother would have been so proud to know Elizabeth Blackwell knew her daughter's name. Later, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Clara found Sam on their porch sitting in the rocking chair he'd made while she was pregnant with James. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Too full," he said. "Of food, of everything, gratitude, joy. That feeling when life is so good it almost hurts." Clara settled into his lap, her head on his shoulder. "I know that feeling. Do you remember," Sam said, "that first morning when I asked if you were all right? I said I was fine. You were lying. I was surviving. There's a difference. And now." Clara lifted her head, looked at him. This man who'd offered her a ride when she had nothing, who'd given her space to heal, who'd built this life alongside her plank by plank. Now I'm living, truly living, because of me, because of us, because of what we chose to build from the wreckage of our separate disasters. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds. Cattle lowing, horses nickering the eternal Wyoming wind through the cottonwoods. Inside, their children slept safe. Nearby, their extended family rested. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Patience to treat ranch work, to do children, to teach a community to continue building. But tonight, Clara Hayes sat with her husband on the porch of the home they'd built, looking out over the land they'd claimed through work and will, and knew with bone-deep certainty that every broken road had led her exactly where she belonged. "Sam," she said softly. Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me that day at the station. Not the desperate woman, not the abandoned bride, but me. The person I could become." "Clara," Sam said, turning her face toward his, "I didn't see who you could become. I saw who you already were. Brave, capable, unbroken despite everything. I just offered you a place to prove it. And now you've proved it to the whole territory. Hell, to the whole country. The articles you write, the doctors you're training, the school we built. Clara, you're changing the world." "We're changing the world," she corrected. Together, he agreed. As the moon rose full and bright over the valley, casting everything in silver light, Clara thought about the woman she'd been on that train platform 5 years ago. That woman had thought her life was ending. She'd had no idea it was just beginning. The abandoned bride had become a doctor. The desperate stranger had become a cornerstone. The broken woman had become whole, not through rescue, but through the daily choice to build, rather than crumble, to reach out, rather than close off, to transform disaster into foundation. "Come to bed," Sam said, standing and pulling her up with him. "Tomorrow's going to be busy." "Every tomorrow is busy." "Would you want it any other way?" Clara considered, then smiled. "Never." As they went inside, Clara paused at the door, looking back at the land spread out under starlight. Somewhere out there, another woman might be standing on a train platform, abandoned and desperate. Somewhere, another outsider was being told they didn't belong. Somewhere, another broken person was wondering if wholeness was possible. For them, Clara thought, we keep building. We keep proving that second chances exist, that belonging can be created, that families can be chosen, that love is stronger than law, and courage more powerful than convention. The Wyoming wind carried the scent of sage and possibility. And Clara Hayes, once Mitchell, once nobody, now everything she'd never dared dream, closed the door on the night and walked toward tomorrow. The story that had begun with abandonment ended with abundance. The journey that started in desperation concluded in deep contentment. And the woman who'd lost everything had gained more than she'd ever thought possible. Not through luck or rescue, but through the revolutionary act of refusing to be broken. Home, she thought, as Sam's hand found hers in the darkness of their bedroom. She was home. And home was not a place, but a choice renewed daily to build, rather than break, to love, rather than fear, to open, rather than close. Outside, the wind sang through the valley, and the future stretched out like a promise waiting to be kept.